Zelda Invades Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476. Hello was nailed to the ground. Link appeared on the battlefield. His eyes, which were extremely perceptive, had seen the four Zeldas vomiting blood clearly. Tony saw the princesses being knocked away by Hela one after another, so he hurried over. But when he saw Link riding the cherry motorcycle he gave him, Tony's nervousness turned into a whistle of relief. You're here at the right time. It's just in time for a hero to save a beauty. If not, I'll give you some fireworks for your hero's debut. Tony was like a flying beetle with its shell flipped open, with weapons appearing from all parts of his body. Then he whispered, "The ceremony has begun." Then Iron Man released light attacks from all parts of his body like an irrigation sprinkler, locking onto the enemy and hitting them one after another. A large number of enemies were hit by Tony. Rogers knocked down an undead soldier with a punch and saw Link reviving again. He immediately raised his shield and shouted, "It's time to counterattack." Link stared at Hela with cold eyes. He reached out and helped the first generation princess nearby. Zelda also hurried to check on the other princesses. The first princess' shoulders slumped and she nestled in Link's arms. Her tense face relaxed and she looked at Link's chin and whispered, "It's great that you can come back in time." Navi said. Link feels that he is still too late. The Washan princess tried to stand up, picked up the sword of the ancient hero and handed it to Link and smiled while covering her shoulder. "Are you in good spirits?" Link smiled at her and nodded. "Thank you for your hard work." He clenched the sword of the ancient hero in his hand. He put down the first princess and declined the Washan princess' request to follow him. He walked towards Hela, who was quietly waiting for him. Midona became smaller and floated to Link, saying pitifully, "She is so strong. You have to be vigilant." Link patted Hela's back gently to comfort her. The ancient hero in his hand was buzzing. Hela looked at Link. "You finally came out. What terrible tricks have you been hiding and brewing? Just try it out. I hope to amuse me as much as possible." This goddess of death is powerful, but she is always unwilling to use her full strength. She is smart, but she is never willing to use her wisdom. Because of her excessive power and wisdom, Hela's arrogance exceeds that of all life in the world. This is also an important reason for the tragedy in her original world. It was destroyed by Ragnarok within a few days after the seal was lifted. Odin died, and his daughter followed. Arrogance is her biggest enemy. Link knows this very well. Navi also became serious. "Hela, let's fight." Hela always had a smile on her face. She was too conceited. She always regarded Link's seriousness as a joke. She squatted down, grabbed the Master Sword, and said contemptuously, "I will use your sword to cut off your head." You like the smile on her face froze. Hela was so strong that she could crush Thor's hammer. She never thought that there would be a weapon that she could not use. But the fact happened to her. Hela couldn't lift the Master Sword. How embarrassing. Hela smiled in a mysterious way to make up for the embarrassment. She laughed softly and said, "Your toy is a bit special, but all weapons in the world will succumb to the strong. And I'm strong. Why can't I lift it?" Hela's face became ferocious. She felt someone touch her shoulder, and when she turned around, she saw a ghost face, her undead soldier, who touched Hela carefully and still made a lifting action seriously. It seemed to show Hela how to lift the Master Sword, with a serious and stupid look. Hela was furious. "I don't need you to teach me how to lift things." She punched the undead soldier, and the mummy-like guy's head was broken and fell to the ground in a daze. "I'll let you break into my battlefield." Ha ha ha. Midona, who was weak from the injury, laughed while holding her belly on Link's shoulder, with a mocking tone in her voice. "The Master Sword is exclusive to Link. No one can use it except him. Don't think too much." Hela pointed at the first princess and said angrily, "Why can she use it?" Midona spread her hands and said, "She has a good relationship with Link." Hela looked at Link's calm and slightly mocking eyes and immediately became angry. "It's a weapon exclusive to you, right?" She raised her foot and wanted to crush the Master Sword, but Link waved his hand and the Master Sword immediately returned to his hand. Tut! Link's body sank and disappeared in an instant. He turned into a phantom and rushed towards Hela. Hela's eyes burned with fire. Come, I'll show you what a real battle is. A sharp sword made of black crystal immediately appeared in Hela's hand. Bang! The two swords collided. Hela's face changed. Your power, Link didn't answer, and the sword of the ancient hero slashed from bottom to top. Hela dodged backwards immediately, while Link chased after her. Smash, smash, smash. Hela waved her hand, and a large number of black crystal daggers appeared around Link, stabbing at Link in unison, like a rapidly compressed balloon. Link shook his shoulders, and the ancient warrior's sword in his hand was replaced with a Hylia crystal shield. His body shrank and turned into a child. With the shield in his hand, he rushed out of Hela's encirclement. Hela was shocked. You can become small. Little Link waved his hand, and a layer of smooth thin ice floated under his feet. He quickly accelerated and slashed, and the Master Sword cut Hela's leg. A large black crystal rose under Hela's feet, and the Master Sword chopped it, creating a crack. When he looked up, he saw Hela looking down from above, throwing two black crystal swords in her hands down to stab Link. Little Link immediately put a blow light bomb behind him. Bang! He smashed Hela's sword with his shield, and quickly grew larger in the air. He turned his body, and replaced the Master Sword with Thor's hammer, and smashed Hela's chin hard. Hela's body tilted to the right. Link replaced the shield in his right hand with the sword of the ancient warrior, and stabbed it into Hela's chest. He pressed it down, and nailed it to the ground. Thor's hammer was raised high, and bang, another blow to Hela's face. The hammer was raised by the recoil, and switched to the light scale spear again. With both hands falling, the Master Sword and the light scale spear stabbed Hela at the same time, and penetrated into the ground. Hela was nailed to the ground by Link's 3 weapons. 2 artifacts and 1 hero weapon greatly restricted Hela's power, and Link pressed Hela's chin, and the new power in his body penetrated Hela's body, constantly breaking up Hela's condensed power of death. Finally, a trace of fear appeared on Hela's face. She looked at Link, who was very calm, and gritted her teeth. You can't kill me. You will get tired sooner or later. I will keep a close eye on you, and you will die at my hands sooner or later. Link pointed his finger, and Hela's mouth was immediately filled with ice cubes. He looked at Hela coldly, took the ether particles from Madonna, and whispered, "Guess what will happen if I inject uncontrolled ether particles into your body?" Hela opened her eyes wide, and a chill came out of her heart. Welcome to Vote and Subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 477. Hela is defeated. The god-killing body. The battle was still going on all around. Link shouted, "Hela is in my hands. Stop her minions." The voice echoed across the battlefield. Link's clear and childish voice seemed to have some magic. With just one sentence, the undead soldiers stopped swinging their weapons and looked at Link blankly. Quicksilver ran through 2 undead soldiers and stopped dizzy. "Sorry, I didn't notice anyone calling for a pause." Heimdall and other Asgardian warriors were surrounded, and everyone gradually prepared to die in battle. Just as they were about to return to Valhalla, those undead soldiers, who were coming in waves, stood there as if they had lost their magic. Sif was covered in scars, and her eyes were splashed with blood red. She shrugged her shoulders and knelt on the ground. Win. Nori also floated beside Link's shoulder and said viciously, "Link's power has suppressed you now. If you don't admit defeat, the other particles will be infused into your body, and you will suffer for the rest of your life." Hela gritted her teeth. "Let me admit defeat. Don't dream. Don't think of killing me with other particles. I'm not immortal." Her voice was fierce, revealing an unspeakable pressure. As the overlord of the 9 realms who led the army to kill one side, her momentum was undoubtedly revealed. People with a little lower willpower would involuntarily succumb to Hela, but Link still heard a hint of fear in her tone. Because the Dark Elves have all been wiped out, there is no one in the world who knows how to control the ether particles to extract the body. The ether particles can't kill Hela, but this most bizarre infinite gem will bring Hela endless pain, as if a huge and self-aware parasite is living in her body, and this parasite will accompany her for the rest of her life. Hela was struggling to break free from the suppression of the 3 weapons, but this time Link's power was different from before. In the light, there was also a domineering element. This made Link's light power have the property of restraining Hela, and Hela was particularly familiar with this element because she had also seen it from Odin. Link was very strong before, but his body was weak. Hela could easily beat Link seriously, but now the situation is completely opposite. Link's physique contains a kind of power that makes her, who is so proud, afraid. This kid. What kind of growth has he achieved in such a short period of time? Exclamation mark. Hela was in doubt. Link saw that he pressed the other particles, the dark red particles, that moved by himself, to Hela's mouth, just like using ice cubes just now. Hela immediately felt a terrible feeling spreading along her esophagus. Link whispered again, "Now, I can still control the other particles to withdraw, but I'm not sure about that in a while." Hela was convulsing in fear. She felt the other particles entangled with her death power, making her body more and more strange. Hela finally gave in, snorted hurriedly, opened her eyes wide and told Link she gave up. The other particles stopped moving immediately. This ability to control the reality gem made Hela's heart tremble. Midona looked at Hela suspiciously. If you let her go like this, she will retaliate. Link looked at Hela quietly. Hela looked at her mouth with her eyes, and the other particles were withdrawn under Link's will. Hela retched violently, but she hadn't eaten for tens of thousands of years, and couldn't spit out anything. She felt very humiliated, but Hela also knew that, if she didn't give in, this terrible rejection reaction would accompany her for the rest of her life. At that time, what kind of compensation could the so-called kingship bring to Hela? Hela panted and looked at Link's calm eyes, wondering why this boy suddenly became so scary. But she was self-aware and immediately swore, "I, Hela, swear in the name of my father, that I will no longer invade the earth, kill my brothers and mother, and no longer fight for the Asgard residents in your hands. Are you satisfied?" Midona said angrily, "What about Asgard? And you swore, and then regretted it? Link should feed her other particles." Hela was furious. "I'm the goddess of death, and I will never break the oath I made. Asgard is mine. I will never give it to others. I'm the king of Asgard. No one can make me surrender." Asgard and Hela's lives are tied together. Once Thor migrates the people back to Asgard, Hela may do something to them. Link stood up and pulled out 3 weapons from Hela one by one. He stepped back 2 steps. Hela stared at Link with hatred in her eyes. Hela said fiercely, "I will keep my oath, but Link, you have been marked. You have angered a god, and a tragic fate awaits you. Fenrir, let's go back." She waved her hand coolly, but Fenrir did not come back. Hela roared again, "Fenrir!" Bang! A scarred wolf, looking battered, was thrown by Hulk like garbage. Hela was even more angry, but she did not dare to lose her temper. Her life journey was a journey of fighting and victory. After meeting Link, she was repeatedly defeated, and finally even the power she was proud of was restrained by Link. This kind of humiliating experience, Hela had never seen it before in her long life. Hela waved her hand, and the undead army and the dying Fenrir were transformed into black light and floated into the sky. Hulk sat on the ground, clenched his 2 green fists, and uttered a word, "Weak god." Loki, who was receiving treatment in the base, sneezed for no reason, tearing the wound, and his face became even paler. Frigga hurriedly and gently wiped the sweat from Loki's forehead. She wanted to go to the battlefield in person, but was persuaded by Natasha to come back. Loki shook his head and found that Thor was gone. So he asked his mother, "Where did Thor go?" Frigga said with a melancholy face, "He went to find Hela." Loki's face was strange. Is he going to steal Link's head? If so, he will be beaten by Link. The Avengers walked quietly and formed a circle around Hela. But Hela disdained this. She was only afraid of Link. Throwing her cloak and about to leave, she heard Link coldly say, "Stop." Hela's body was stiff, and she turned back angrily. "What else do you want to do? Why not try to start a war?" But she spoke a little weak. Link said coldly, "You started a war without authorization, and injured my companions. And you just walked away." Hela's body was tense, and she was brewing anger. But in the end, she bowed and said in a trembling voice, "I'm sorry, everyone." Link said angrily, "Get out." Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 478, Skeleton Swordsman's Retrial. The shout of "Get out" made Hela so angry that she vomited blood and wanted to fight Link again. But for some reason, she didn't have much fighting spirit. She had to climb the Rainbow Bridge with hatred and return to the empty Asgard. The Avengers cheered in unison. Miffa was trying to heal the 4 princesses. Now they were almost healed. Seeing Link forcing Hela back majestically, they were all proud of him at this time. But Zelda frowned and found that Link was clenching his fists and trembling slightly. So she hurried forward and whispered, "Is your body unable to bear it?" Link shook his head. Navi smiled and explained sympathetically, "Link is angry. He doesn't want to let Hela go back at all. It's just that he can't kill her. Now Link is roaring in his heart, 'Dare to hurt my woman. I will skin you alive.' This idea." Navi seriously imitated the voice of a fierce man, but it didn't sound like something Link could say. But Princess Zelda and Link both blushed. Although Link won the battle gloriously, he was very angry in his heart. "You, Hela, came to my territory and destroyed the Avengers base that I had just repaired. You left so many corpses, enemies, and many of my companions were injured. If it weren't for the inability to blow up Asgard, Link would not have let Hela go like this. What's more, you injured Zelda. Not just one, but 4 Zeldas. I won't let you go, even if you injured one, but you directly gave me 4 and a Madonna." Link was almost mad to death. Hela looked unhappy when she left, and Link himself was also very unhappy. If Hela knew what Link was thinking at this moment, I wonder what expression she would have. Zelda shyly pulled Link's hand and watched Link's clenched right fist soften and loosen in her 2 small hands. She whispered, "So you are angry for us, which makes me a little jealous. I want to get hurt a little too, so that you can care for me." Link looked at Zelda's red face, but he knew. With Zelda's current physique, it's probably difficult for her to get hurt in the future. Now, the bodies of Link and Zelda have been forged into god-killing bodies by the primordial fire on the baked apples, given by the goddess Hylia. It's beyond the limit of Hylians. This gives Link an extremely strong physical fitness, so that he can fight, win, and suppress Hela. The so-called god-killing body not only has extremely strong physical fitness, Link's previous body only had top-notch recovery ability and teeth and stomach. It also brings Link a terrible additional effect. That is to suppress gods like Hela and Thor. A mortal has broken through the limits of human beings, which is undoubtedly a blasphemy against the so-called high and mighty gods. The god-killing body carries offensive power to God, so Link can use 3 weapons to pin Hela to the ground. It is precisely because of this power that Hela is suppressed by Link without knowing it. Princess Sky and the others came up curiously. Mipha hesitated a little, pulled Link's other hand, and said with some fear, "Link, you have a strange temperament now. A little overbearing." Princess Washang smiled and nodded. "Yes, you have a kingly demeanor." After she said this, she and the other Zelda blushed again, and were very shy. No doubt these beautiful girls had some pink fantasies in their minds. They are the princesses of Hyrule. If Link wants to be a king, it is natural to be with them. Princess Sky looked at the smiling Link, then at Zelda, and observed carefully, "You see, it's not just Link, while Zelda, has also become much tougher for some reason." The princesses nodded one after another. It feels like Link and Zelda now always have a kind of difficult to approach. At this time, Zelda's temperament is also more arrogant, even a little depressed. Let's put it this way, it's like she changed from a delicate little princess to an aloof and unparalleled queen. Midona squinted comfortably, while enjoying Mipha's considerate treatment. While grinning, she said, yes, Link has to grow up. He can't always look like a cute boy. He has to be cooler." Yaya poked her head out from Link's hair. She touched the fish that had been fighting for a whole time. It fell asleep. Seeing Link's temperament change drastically at this moment, her 2 red dragon eyes were full of fascination. Link and Zelda looked at each other deeply. That's right. It turned out that the body of the god killer had an impact on their overall temperament. And the impact was very big, even creating unfamiliarity among the princesses. Faye suddenly floated out and said, "My lord Link, he is looking for you." Navi asked on behalf of Link, "Who is he?" "Faye, he has no name." Navi then asked, "Why is he looking for Link?" Faye said, "He said he wants to teach Link a lesson." Navi was surprised and said, "Who is it? Who is it? Coming up to teach someone a lesson?" Midona thought of something and asked directly, "Faye, you are not talking about the skeleton swordsman who fought with Link?" Faye nodded blankly. Navi let out a long "Why don't you just say it? You're making me go around in circles with you." Faye said, "But he really has no name." Navi said firmly, "Since he teaches Link, then from now on, Just call him the cadaver teacher. Faye said stupidly. It's better to call him the skeleton teacher. Navi said angrily. Huh. So you have the intelligence to refute my poor naming. Faye ignored the annoyed Navi and turned to Link obediently and said, "My lord Link, the skeleton teacher said that it's not just you, but also Zelda, the one with the big forehead." Big forehead. Zelda covered her smooth forehead. Her eyes were tearful with grievance. Link was puzzled. The skeleton swordsman was not only looking for him, but also Zelda. The sword of the ancient hero in his hand suddenly glowed, and then it flashed twice. The sword of the ancient hero fell to the ground, and Link and Zelda disappeared. Midona covered her face and screamed, "The sword eats people." Banner hurriedly said, "Hey, we just finished the battle, don't let anything happen again, okay?" Vision gasped in shock, "Oh my god. What happened to this world? Why does everything eat people?" She hid behind the Scarlet Witch tremblingly, and then sighed like a literary giant. "This is a world where people eat people." The Twilight Princess picked up the sword of the ancient warrior and said with a smile, "They just entered the sword to find the skeleton swordsman. The skeleton swordsman is actually the sword soul of this sword." The Sky Princess regretted, "The soul of this sword is a skeleton. Why can't it be a cute girl like Faye?" Faye replied seriously, "Faye is not cute. Faye is a sword soul without emotions." The princesses smiled. Link and Zelda screamed and fell into the world and the sword in the white fog. They didn't notice that the figure of the goddess Hylia suddenly left the skeleton swordsman in a hurry. Welcome to Vote and Subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 479, Double Trial, Link's Weakness. Link and Zelda, who were falling in a hurry, naturally did not see the goddess Hylia's hasty departure. It was not clear what the relationship between the goddess and the skeleton swordsman was. Zelda rubbed her head unsteadily and grabbed Link's hand and was pulled up. The princess said in a panic, "What is that skeleton teacher going to do to us? Is this person very fierce?" Link recalled the thousands of battles he had with the skeleton swordsman, which were like a nightmare. At this time, the skeleton swordsman walked out of the thick fog step by step. The two empty holes stared at Link and Zelda, nodded slowly, and then raised his shield and sword. He didn't answer directly, but directly invited him to fight. Zelda was a little scared. "Me? Should I go too?" The skeleton swordsman nodded. Zelda was timid for a while. She was the least good at fighting among the princesses. So she laughed dryly. "Well, I'm not good at fighting." Link was also puzzled. Why did the skeleton swordsman summon Zelda when he was fine? The skeleton swordsman's jaw shook, and a vague voice uttered, "You must defeat me, otherwise you will never get out." Zelda Link's face changed. Then the skeleton swordsman's foot bones made a cracking sound, and he rushed over quickly, with a posture very similar to Link. Because of the bones all over his body, he formed an effect like a hollow valley. So during the rapid sprint, his body made a whooshing sound of hollow holes, adding a touch of weirdness. Link immediately took out the sword of the ancient hero, and then threw the master sword to Zelda. Although Zelda's martial arts skills are not good, she has a very high talent and can easily lift the master sword. 100 years ago, she inserted the master sword into the stone platform in front of the Deku tree. As a result, 100 years later, Link had to work hard to pull it out again. This world in the sword is different from reality. The skeleton swordsman also held the sword of the ancient hero in his hand. The weapons in his hands are all illusory, including his master sword and the sword of the ancient hero. After all, he was in the sword of the ancient hero, so how could he use it? Link immediately stood in front of Zelda, holding a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, and rushed forward. Link was full of fighting spirit. He had lost to the skeleton swordsman thousands of times before, and only won once. So when he saw the skeleton swordsman, he couldn't help but burst out with his competitive spirit. Clang! The two swords collided with each other, and sparks flew. The skeleton swordsman stepped back suddenly, nodded, and expressed his appreciation for Link. Then he moved his feet skillfully, turned sideways, wandered, and stabbed again. This time he didn't look for Link, but took a detour to attack Zelda behind Link. Sure enough, Link swung his sword and slashed, but the skeleton swordsman was very strong. He immediately passed through Link's attack range, and his speed suddenly increased. He stabbed Zelda, who couldn't dodge in time, with a sword. Zelda's body suddenly scattered a burst of white light. She looked surprised and then disappeared on the spot. Link was furious. Although he knew it was just a test and the skeleton swordsman didn't really hurt Zelda, this move still angered Link. Zelda was killed while he was protecting her. This was undoubtedly a great insult to him. He opened his eyes and stabbed fiercely, but his body was very stiff. From the sword of the ancient warrior, a little bit of white light appeared, which then spread to his whole body, and finally his body dissipated. The skeleton swordsman said coldly, "You must all survive before you defeat me." After that, Link and Zelda gathered in front of the skeleton swordsman again. Link still had a face full of anger, holding the sword of the warrior tightly in his hand, and stabbed the sword quickly. This time he was going to be serious. Zelda also nervously defended with a sword. She was very irritable now, blaming herself for not asking the Washang princess to practice swordsmanship in normal times, but now she was in trouble and dragged Link down. She saw clearly that with Link's bravery and swordsmanship, he could certainly defeat the skeleton swordsman. But if Zelda is added, the combat power will drop sharply. Zelda is a complete burden in this top-level military contest. Soon, the skeleton swordsman saw it clearly, avoided Link's active attack, and attacked Zelda from behind. This tactic was extremely successful, and Zelda once again turned into countless points of light from the skeleton swordsman's sword. Link then disappeared. Bite. Link collided his sword and shield fiercely. Link also saw clearly that, although his anger was very hot, the angrier he was, the more dangerous he was, and the more sensitive his thinking was. He immediately switched tactics from active attack to defensive counterattack. He wanted to take advantage of the skeleton swordsman's tendency to attack Zelda and launch a counterattack. Like to attack weaknesses, right? Then let the weakness become a well-known bait. The skeleton sword attacked, and Link was very close to Zelda. Link's attack was fierce, and his defense was not bad. After all, he had a shield in one hand and a sword in the other. Bang! The sword tip collided with the skeleton swordsman again. The tactical adjustment immediately took effect. Every time the skeleton swordsman attacked Zelda, once he launched an offensive, his flaws would be exposed, which became an opportunity for Link to attack him. The two attacked and defended, testing each other. Zelda hid behind Link, holding a sword to protect him. Link tried hard to protect her, but at the same time she was tortured by the guilt in her heart. Among the 5 princesses, she was almost the most useless one. The other 4 princesses, whether it was the sword skills of the Washang princess, which were comparable to Link's, or the bow and arrows of the Twilight princess and the starry sky power of the Sky princess, even the newly released first generation princesses were able to help Link, and they also had strong combat capabilities. They had fought hella with the Washang princess. Only she. Zelda bit her lip. Link took advantage of the enemy's offensive tendency and launched a defensive counterattack. His eyes were so venomous that he immediately found several excellent offensive opportunities and stabbed them like a venomous snake. The skeleton swordsman's actions immediately became a little embarrassed. At the same time, he and Zelda's cooperation was developing rapidly. The two of them were in tune with each other. Although Zelda's fighting ability was insufficient, her reaction and learning abilities were extremely fast. She was able to barely keep up with Link's pace. Of course, this also cost more than a dozen failures, and the reason for the failures was the same. That is, Zelda was it. This put a lot of pressure on her. Can't be a burden. Can't be a burden. Zelda was the bait in Link's hand at this time, waiting for the skeleton swordsman to go online. The skeleton swordsman failed to attack several times, and Link seized the opportunity. As Link attacked fiercely, the skeleton swordsman suddenly did a backflip and dodged quickly. Link knew that this was a great opportunity, so he rushed forward in a hurry, stabbed a tricky point with the sword tip, and attacked suddenly like a storm. Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 480, Hidden Edge. Reversal Victory. Whoosh. The skeleton swordsman did a backflip and threw the weapon in his hand immediately. Link, who rushed over, was caught off guard. The sword brushed his ear, causing his pupils to shrink, and the blade pierced Princess Zelda's heart. Damn it. It was almost successful. Link tried to keep his mind from anger. He and Zelda cheered each other up. They had made considerable progress in this test of the skeleton swordsman. Link did the same thing again, but this time the skeleton swordsman changed his previous fierce attack and his offensive became more bizarre. Since Link's defense was focused on Zelda, his own defense would have flaws. The skeleton swordsman was keenly aware of this, and attacked him forcefully, which worked immediately. He immediately assassinated Link twice, and Link and Zelda turned into light spots and disappeared again. Link's eyebrows stood up. He was not convinced. But this is indeed a difficult problem. If the defense focuses on Zelda, there will be opportunities for him to take advantage of, and there will always be weaknesses exposed. And Link did not have a good solution. Link braced himself, and was about to charge forward, to fight the skeleton swordsman again, when Zelda grabbed Link's sleeve. Link was stunned and turned back. The skeleton swordsman remained motionless. After many failures, Zelda's heart became more and more depressed. She was the most inferior princess. At this time, her eyes were moist, and she said in a hoarse voice, "It's all my fault. If you were with another Zelda, you would never." Link was moved, and immediately shook his head. He smiled and touched Zelda's head. "No, you don't have to blame yourself. It's my responsibility. I didn't protect you well." Zelda shook her head. "No, you have tried very hard and reluctantly. I have become a burden to you." Link smiled and said softly with a different emotion, "No, you are not a burden to me. Being able to protect you is my greatest happiness." Boom. Link actually said such words. It was incredible. Zelda's mind was confused, and her face was red. She could clearly feel the strong thumping sound in her heart. She felt that the dissatisfaction, self-denial, and anger in her heart had disappeared, leaving only the passionate emotions of a girl. It seemed that, as long as Link kept looking at her like this, some of the sufferings in the world could be laughed off. Maybe love is useless and can't solve any problems, but it can make all problems no longer problems. She stared at Link blankly, but her heart became firm again. Link, contrary to his usual dullness, took Zelda's two little hands. He said softly, "Believe me, we will win." Zelda nodded obediently and wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes. The two came back to the skeleton swordsman, and the skeleton swordsman said coldly, "Are you done crying?" Link was angry again. "How can you, a skeleton, have such a bad personality?" Zelda nodded. She held the master sword tightly with both hands, and said slowly, "This battle, we will definitely defeat you." The skeleton swordsman did not answer, but jumped on his feet, and quickly met with a sword. Link raised his sword in a hurry to respond. He didn't know why Zelda was so sure that they could win this battle after losing so many times. But since Zelda had regained her composure and was full of fighting spirit, Link naturally couldn't let her down. Zelda immediately said, "Link, feel free to attack, no need to protect me." Link was surprised. Not protecting Zelda? When did Zelda become so confident? Could it be that she had comprehended some kind of peerless swordsmanship that could kill people in seconds, and now she has become a peerless swordsmanship master and doesn't need his protection? It doesn't seem like it. At least her sword holding and fighting postures are not up to par. Despite this, Link still chose to believe in Zelda, just as Zelda believed in Link almost without reservation. Swish. Link's sword edge instantly became sharp. The skeleton swordsman was a little afraid, so he retreated repeatedly and pulled out space to adjust the rhythm. At the same time, his empty eyes shifted to Princess Zelda. Zelda also looked at him. Although her hands were shaking a little, her eyes did not avoid or give way, and she looked at the skeleton swordsman stubbornly. Link and the skeleton swordsman fought with clang clang clang, and the two swords of the ancient warriors frequently collided. The two's offense and defense were dazzling, and their sword skills were extremely similar, so it was as if there were two Links fighting. In reality, ordinary duels often determine the winner within a few moves. The high intensity and extremely fast-paced confrontation between Link and the skeleton swordsman is particularly rare. Although the two's moves are not as gorgeous as the peerless princess, the tension and suffocation brought by the fight make the two's fight very entertaining. Unfortunately, there was only Zelda as an audience. The skeleton swordsman fought with Link and said, "Have you adapted to the body of the god killer now?" Link was stunned, so the skeleton swordsman asked them to come here to undergo the test in order to adapt to their current new bodies. As a result, the skeleton swordsman supported Link in such a trance and immediately changed his rhythm, bypassed Link, and attacked Zelda like a ghost. Damn it. Link gritted his teeth. His thoughts were so fast that others could hardly notice this slight flaw, but the skeleton swordsman still caught it and quickly changed his pace, rushing towards Link's weak spot, Zelda. Link turned on his toes and hurriedly followed. The skeleton swordsman deliberately appeared to be a little weaker than Link just now, so he suddenly jumped up and tore a piece of heaven and earth from Link's weak gap. This kind of combat awareness is really rare. Seeing the skeleton swordsman's sword about to pierce Zelda's vitals, Link's heart sank. This time he lost again. But he didn't give up and tried his best to chase. Zelda held the master sword in front of her with both hands and saw the skeleton swordsman stabbing her heart at an extremely fast speed. Zelda's sword skills were far from being able to withstand such an attack. But her next move surprised the skeleton swordsman and Link. Zelda rushed towards the sword, as if she was committing suicide. Swish. Zelda quickly dodged the vital point. The shoulder was pierced by the sword of the ancient hero and immediately penetrated. Just as the skeleton swordsman was about to draw his sword to attack again, Zelda injured the pain and slashed the blade close to the skeleton sword. The master sword crossed and stuck on the hilt of the skeleton swordsman. In this way, Zelda was like the scabbard of the sword of the ancient hero, keeping it firmly in her shoulder. The blade of the skeleton swordsman was covered. Zelda's self-sacrificing act caught the skeleton swordsman off guard. Link followed closely and swung his sword. He cut off the head of the skeleton swordsman. Crack. The skeleton swordsman's body stiffened and finally fell to the ground in the form of a skeleton. The sword of the ancient hero that pierced Zelda's shoulder also turned into a light spot and disappeared. Zelda held her shoulder in pain and smiled at Link and said, "How is it? I said we will win." This smile has a special beauty, and Link couldn't help but hold Zelda in his arms. At this time, Zelda's body emits a strong light. Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support the genuine work. Chapter 481 Fusion Technique, Divine Guardian. Zelda in his arms suddenly emitted a bright light, which startled Link. Although as a Hylian, it was very common for Link and Zelda to glow like a light bulb at any time. But Link still felt very uncomfortable. The Hylian crystal shield hanging on Link's shoulder produced some kind of wonderful touch. Zelda in his arms spread out like water, just like a swarm of bees returning to their nest, flowing into the crystal Hylian shield. The crystal shield broke away from Link's hand and flew into the sky. Zelda's figure seemed to be dancing in the transparent and crystal material. The pattern on the surface of the shield also changed, gradually dissipating into a smooth plane. The image of a praying long-haired woman gradually floated up in the plane. The aura of this shield suddenly became sacred. Link watched all this happen in surprise. He didn't know why Zelda would merge with his Hylian shield. Behind him, the figure of the skeleton swordsman gathered again, his lower jaw swaying up and down as he said, "The princess's devotion has awakened a new power, divine protection." At a critical moment, she merged her soul into the Hylia shield, giving the crystal shield a stronger combat capability. And you can use shield strikes. Shield strike? Link reached out and grasped the new Hylia shield. Looking back, he saw that the skeleton swordsman had already taken a stance. "Future hero, try to attack me." Link nodded, adjusted his state, and rushed forward with the shield raised. A swinging and sprinting action naturally appeared in his mind. He put his shoulder behind the shield, and with a bang, it hit the skeleton swordsman's body. The center of the shield erupted with a fiery force, which directly shattered the skeleton swordsman's hand bones, and knocked him away for a distance. The skeleton's body was stiffened by the huge impact. Knocked away, stiffened. Link looked deeply at the crystal Hylia shield in his hand. Is this the powerful power that Zelda brought him? For Link, the two most important skills are shield counter and time stop. Time stop can cause a short pause in the enemy. It is an excellent skill to seize the rhythm of the battle. Link never has too few skills that can interrupt the enemy's combat offensive. Divine Guardian not only has a powerful attack ability, but also has the effect of repelling the enemy and temporarily hitting the enemy to the point of losing combat effectiveness. For Link, it is simply a perfect match. This greatly increases the thickness of Link's combat skills and combat level. Natasha had previously guessed how terrible Link's stunt of seamlessly switching weapons would be. When fighting Hela, Link also initially used the tactic of frequently switching weapons, and the result was excellent. Hella's strength is far superior to Link's, but she is still suppressed by Link's storm offensive of seamlessly switching weapons. Now the Hylia Crystal Shield has added new functions from simple defense and shield counter. This will undoubtedly further enhance Link's combat ability. It is worthy of the effect brought by Zelda. Link tapped the shield lightly, and there was a whoosh sound from inside. A white light gushed out, and the shield returned to its original Hylia triangle pattern. In front of Link, the light turned into the pretty and beautiful girl Zelda again. Zelda looked at Link expectantly, her big eyes flashing with warm light. "Now I'm your shield. I can protect you too." The two smiled at each other. The skeleton swordsman suddenly said, "Since you have already received the reward, leave quickly." Link and Zelda were driven out of the sword world by the skeleton swordsman. Before they were happy for a while. The skeleton swordsman watched Link and Zelda turn into light spots and return to the real world, and remained silent for a long time. Then, the figure of the goddess Hylia appeared beside him. The goddess Hylia was wearing a white robe, with a pair of broken wings folded behind her. The original white big wings were broken for Link's crystal Hylia shield and the resurrection of the four heroes. This kind of incompleteness gave the goddess Hylia a strange sense of beauty. Goddess Hylia waved her hand gently, and the skeleton swordsman's bones shrank rapidly, becoming only the physique of a 10 to 12-year-old boy. Then a layer of light green light enveloped the skeleton swordsman, and a little boy with golden hair and piercing eyes appeared beside Goddess Hylia. He was wearing a short green coat and a green hat. This was the original appearance of the skeleton swordsman. His life was forever frozen in his childhood. The hero of time. Goddess Hylia looked at the direction where Link and others disappeared, and whispered, "These two children are the hope of the future of this world." She lowered her head, and looked at the calm little boy beside her, the hero of time. "Their appearance proves that your sacrifice is meaningful. It's hard for you to persist for so many years." The hero of time shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I like the new hero named after me." Goddess Hylia nodded. Yes, he lived up to the name Link. At the edge of the universe, the battle between the Ender and Ganon to devour each other is coming to an end. This battle is completely different from what Link has experienced. There is no fighting at all. It is completely two extremely dark life forms devouring each other. Ancient One witnessed the whole process. The two evil creatures bit and devoured each other like the most primitive animals. In the end, Ganon was gradually defeated because he was greatly weakened by Zelda and Link. In the end, his will was disintegrated by the Ender. At this point, the two demon kings merged together. A more vicious aura came out. If anyone was in this area, they would be seriously mentally polluted and become a puppet of the Ender. Ancient One also felt this extremely malicious invasion, but she barely managed to bear it and was frightened by the powerful power of the Ender at this time. The Ender did not show any happy behavior at the first time, but stood there quietly. His burly silver grey body was like a tall tower, solid and domineering. In his abdomen and chest, it was already stained with Ganon's pollution that was wriggling like magma. The Ender was full of fear. When he devoured Ganon, he realized how suffocating Ganon's roots were. As long as Ganon was given time, he would become a terrifying existence far beyond the Ender. The Ender is the creator of Ganon, but Ganon's abnormal growth has exceeded the control of the Ender. Fortunately, I was reborn in time and devoured him. What kind of monster did I create? The Ender calmed down and looked towards the direction of the earth. He said in his heart, "Link of this era, when I completely absorb Ganon's power, you and the goddess Hylia behind you will become slaves of darkness." He hid his body deep at the edge of the universe. His heart was full of ambition to conquer the world. But he didn't know that there was a sage from the earth who was watching him quietly, and his eyes were a little strange. Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support genuine works. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 482 Saint Thor and Idol Link. Ancient One watched the Ender disappear at the edge of the universe and completely absorb Ganon's power. It seemed that the Ender completely destroyed Ganon, which was correct. But Ancient One's amazing insight after death told her that things were not that simple. From the moment she almost self-destructed, the entire universe became like a mist to her, and no one could stop her. She noticed something strange. Deep in the body of the Ender, there was still a little struggling Ganon's will, and it hid carefully, and the Ender did not find it. Ancient One sneered in his heart, what a tenacious and terrible existence. The Ender must not know that there is such a life form living in his body. Once Ganon grows up again, I'm afraid that the Ender will only face the end of collapse. This is undoubtedly a good thing, because the Ender is too powerful and will pose a threat to the entire universe. And Ganon lurking in the body of the Ender constitutes a hidden danger, which will become a fatal flaw buried deep in the body of the Ender. Ancient One thought, maybe I can try to communicate with Ganon and use a trick to make these two extremely evil guys fight to the death. On Earth, as a large number of Asgardians migrated to the Sky King city, Princess Zelda's country regained its prosperity. Thor, Loki and their mother Frigga also lived in the royal city, but the loss of their homeland made the entire Asgardian very depressed. Especially Thor. His injuries were quickly healed, but he still didn't catch up with the battle against Hela. He witnessed Link defeating Hela and forcing Hela to leave in a humiliating way. He was completely confused, because it should be Thor who saved the Asgardians from the water and fire. The Asgardian generals persuaded Thor to become the new king, but Thor could only refuse silently. Link found Loki and asked where Thor had gone. Loki smiled and said, that melancholy little prince. He's like a lovelorn Romeo, hiding during the day and coming out at night, as if he's allergic to the sun. He hides in some deep areas all day and seems to only want to be accompanied by darkness and his sighs. Link put his hands on his hips and Midona asked unhappily, why don't you just tell me where Thor is? There's no need to gloat over other people's misfortunes. Loki said directly, he's in the Hylia Cathedral. As a devout Hylia believer, his only hope now is to pray to the Hylia goddess. This guy's now like a spotless saint. Link. So Link found Thor in the Hylia Cathedral, and his eyelids twitched, because Thor was not wearing a red cloak and armor as usual, but a simple white robe. It felt like a strong Nordic Viking disguised as a Greek poet. Thor heard Link's footsteps, turned around calmly, and said lightly, Goddess Hylia told me that you are coming. People are always more confused than sober, but fortunately, we have a supreme goddess to entrust our hearts. Link, tell me what questions are in your heart. Link. Midona wiped the non-existent sweat on her head and muttered, is this really Thor? He drank fake wine. Thor smiled lightly, I'm already indifferent to things like wine. Intoxication is only a temporary relief for a mortal. Only a pure mind can allow people to be truly reborn. Bang. Thor, who looked like a charlatan, really deserves a beating. Link couldn't help it, and went up, and threw a blue light bomb at Thor. Thor was blown directly to the wall, covered in dust. Thor said angrily, how dare you use violence in front of Goddess Hylia? You. Navi also said angrily, are you done yet? It really makes people lose the energy to talk to you. Do you understand? You're so stupid. Thor was shocked. Stupid? Link nodded, and you deserve a beating. Midona sneered, it feels like you are a comedian from somewhere, imitating Zelda poorly. Do you know that this makes Zelda very uncomfortable? The girl is very troubled. Okay. Thor slammed the ground. His clothes tore, revealing his armor and cloak. He was unhappy. This is better. Midona nodded. It's much better. As a believer of Goddess Hylia, there is no need to be like this. Have you seen Link and Zelda come here to pray often? Thor's annoyed look suddenly realized, that's right. True piety is not in external things, but in people's hearts. So right, so right. Then his expression suddenly became ethereal. Midona gritted her teeth and said to Link fiercely, this guy obviously hasn't been beaten badly enough. Hit him on the head with Mjolnir. Navi sighed, Thor, we came to you. It's the Earth Security Committee that came to you to discuss relocation. After all the Asgardians have poured into the Earth, and the locals are panicking. The unscrupulous media are also shouting that the Earth has been invaded by aliens. Midona spread her hands. Now that Asgard is occupied by Hela, you will probably have to live on Earth for a long time. You must sign diplomatic relations with the countries here. Otherwise, you Asgardians will not show up and will remain closed in the Sky King city. The World Security Committee will feel very insecure. Thor sighed, leave it to Zelda. She is more suitable to lead the people of Asgard in my place. Navi said, that won't work. Zelda is the princess of our kingdom of Hyrule. She has officially established diplomatic relations with the Earth and is actively promoting Link's superhero brand to increase the influence of the kingdom. What? Link was shocked. Something he didn't even know. What are these girls doing with his portrait rights? Navi sighed. There are only a few people in our kingdom of Hyrule, and the only export brand is Link. So if we want to revive Hyrule, we must make Link a world famous superhero and idol. Link's eyelids twitched. What is Zelda doing? In order to revive Hyrule, you want me to be an idol? Midona showed Link the exquisite smartwatch on her wrist. Look, this is Link's limited edition banana smartwatch launched by Banana Company and Hyrule. Look, the design prototype of the watch strap is your master sword. Buy it and you will also get a life-size pillow. I gave my pillow to Pepper. He likes it very much, but it was accidentally spotted by a Epona and was bitten. Pepper is very depressed now. Link covered his face. Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 483 Captain Marvel appears. Anyway, Link dragged Thor to represent Asgard and sign a diplomatic agreement with the World Security Committee. Although in the eyes of the Avengers, it was just a group of aliens who came to Earth for refuge. But in the eyes of ordinary countries, it was oh my god. Aliens are quietly attacking the Earth. This is a very panic-inducing thing. Previously, S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered an Asgardian hiding on Earth, whose strength far exceeded that of ordinary people, and was a very terrifying warrior. And this time, it was incredible. All the Asgardians came. Such a strong armed force is enough to arouse the fear of the whole world. Thor attended the meeting of both parties. The representative of the World Security Committee shook hands with Thor tremblingly and smiled. My daughter likes you very much. Thor smiled. Thank you. I guess she is also an excellent warrior. Representative. Then Thor solemnly stated that Asgard and Earth maintain a peaceful relationship and have no intention of war. After the meeting, there was a brand new country on Earth. Thor was recalling that Tony and Rogers took Thor to a reporter's question and answer session. Thor resisted the urge to yawn and answered the reporter's questions. So the photo of him with a sleepy face and two big nostrils spread all over the world and became the most famous photo of Thor on Earth. Thor quietly asked Tony, you are a great scientist, is there any way to cut off the connection between Hela and Asgard? Tony whispered, I'm a great scientist, but I'm not a magician. I can't control your field. Besides, I'm very busy now. First, I have to help Pym develop quantum machines. Second, I have to build the Earth's defense system. And third, I have to develop a device that can combine the power of the four beasts to the entire universe. I'm almost exhausted all day long and have no spare energy. Thor deliberately provoked Tony. Men can't say they can't do it. Tony rolled his eyes at Thor. There are too many women who can prove me. And you, haha, have only experienced failed relationships. He shook his head and then continued to make up the knife. Mjolnir doesn't even pay attention to you, and you stay with Link all day. Thor was stunned, and suddenly tears fell from his eyes. Suddenly, the sound of cameras clicking covered the press conference. Link, on the other hand, accompanied the princesses, mainly Zelda, to play in Tony's laboratory. Zelda curiously fiddled with the device invented by Tony, while Jarvis was responsible for explaining it to the princesses. This is a nanoparticle device. It's almost finished, but there is, ding ding. Sorry, I received a message from the other side of the galaxy. Link was stunned. The other side of the galaxy? Zelda frowned. Did something happen to the Guardians of the Galaxy? Jarvis said, yes, it was indeed a signal from them. Because of the loss of information caused by intergalactic transmission, the only signal I got was a distress signal. The danger comes from man-made disasters. The extended information is being intelligently filled in. Princess Washang said, the Guardians of the Galaxy are very confident. They will not contact us for help unless they have to. There must be a strong enemy, and it is very likely to be Jerasim. At this time, Jarvis's supercomputing ability was demonstrated, and he quickly analyzed the incomplete information. Xander was attacked by a legion and the planet has been destroyed. The Nova Alliance is in a state of collapse. The first princess immediately made a decision. The problem seems to be big. Let's go there as soon as possible. Jarvis said, the Earth does not have the ability to fly across galaxies at this stage. The first princess snapped her fingers. It's okay, we have good crossing tools. Mr. Steven. A circle of sparks appeared beside her, and Strange walked out of it calmly, but his face was strange. Why do I look like a butler who is on call at any time? Princess Sky hurriedly asked, can you take us to Xander? Strange rubbed his hair. It's far away, but Ancient One has wandered to that planet before, so he has the coordinates of Xander. After Strange pondered, he looked up and said, got it. Let's go. Princess Washang said, wait, I'll get Link some spare clothes and snacks. Oh. Link, the 5 princesses, and Mipha, who had been quietly following them, were teleported to Xander. Princess Sky covered her head. I feel dizzy. Zelda stood firm and explained, this is because the gravity on 2 different planets is different. Princess Washang looked around, her face very heavy. A big battle. Xander has been destroyed, and Link and others are standing on a ruin. Strange is right beside them, watching this scene, silent. Although I have never been here, I'm sure that this planet must have been beautiful before. Which bastard did such a disgusting thing? Princess Washang summoned her sword and was alert to the surroundings. Zelda used her bracelet to contact the Guardians of the Galaxy. Soon a spaceship arrived. It belonged to Star-Lord, but this spaceship had suffered serious damage. 1/5 of it was destroyed, and it was frightening to see it flying in the sky. When it landed, only the injured Gamora and Star-Lord and others walked out, and even Rocket's hair looked a little dull. Star-Lord's cheerful personality was not reflected. He was very silent. Gamora got off the spaceship and said seriously, this is a terrible legion, even more powerful than the previous Ronin Legion. They attacked here quickly. The Nova Alliance had no ability to resist, and even we were almost killed. The first princess hurriedly asked, who is their leader? Gamora said, Gerasim. The first princess said bitterly, it's him. Then she turned to look at Strange. Please, mobilize people here. I'm afraid there will be a fierce battle. Then she looked at Mipha, and the first princess hid Mipha's narrow shoulders with both hands. You 4 heroes must guard the Earth. Only with you, the 4 beasts can protect the Earth. Mipha nodded, okay. Then she looked at Link quietly for a while, and said sweetly, then Link, I'm leaving. Link nodded. Star-Lord threw his helmet to the ground. What a bunch of bastards. They attacked us. At this moment, Link suddenly felt an incredibly powerful force fluctuation, approaching here quickly. He held both swords, and looked up at the sky. Princess Washang carefully felt it and said, he is a strong man I have never seen before. A handsome woman with long hair wearing a red and blue tights rushed towards the abandoned Xander. Carol said in a deep voice, what a terrible power. Could it be that he destroyed Xander? Welcome to vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 484, Shocking Captain Marvel. Carol saw the tragic situation of Xander and was immediately furious. An entire planet was destroyed like this, and there were a lot of spaceship ruins around the planet. It was easy to see that the scene was caused by the collapse of an entire army and global transportation. Carol approached quickly, her body like a phoenix. Link also faced with a sword and flew into the sky. The arrival of Captain Marvel made Link feel like he was facing a great enemy. Although he knew Captain Marvel, he had never felt her breath. So he was full of suspicion and thought it was some unknown Marvel strongman. Link passed through the atmosphere of Xander and saw a scorching energy rushing towards him at a high speed. Link also hurriedly held up a shield to meet it. Bang! Link used the shield to counterattack the comer, and both were shocked. Link was amazed at the huge impact reflected on the shield, which was at the level of Hela. Carol was also in doubt. After a brief collision, she saw the strength of Link. Just using the shield to knock Carola away is not something that an ordinary strong man can do. Carola shouted, who are you? Why are you attacking this planet? Link saw Carola's appearance clearly during the brief battle. He wondered, Captain Marvel? He immediately left the battle state. Let Navi speak for him. We are from Earth. We heard that this place was attacked, so we rushed over to fight the bad guys. When Carol heard that it was a fellow Earthling, she was not happy or relaxed, but her face was tense. She said coldly, so you are from Earth. Then I feel relieved. Link was about to approach and talk to Carola. Captain Marvel is the strongest in the late Avengers, and she is a friend, not an enemy. As a result, Carola suddenly shook her body and rushed over. She has been wandering in the interstellar for more than 30 years, and her ability to fly in space is superb. She is no longer at the same level as Link. She immediately swayed in front of Link, and when she saw Link's handsome face up close, she was startled, and her eyes stayed on Link's long ears. But the fist in her hand still smashed down like a meteor. Looking for death. Noi's words, "We are from Earth," directly led to Carola's misunderstanding. Because neither Link nor the pendants on his body are native to Earth. So Carola regarded Link as an enemy who tricked her. So she launched a fierce attack without any courtesy. Link was startled and leaned back quickly. This was a real punch from Captain Marvel, which was very difficult to dodge. Link was forced to use bullet time and barely dodged it. His hair was blown away by Carola's fierce punch. Noi said angrily, "What are you doing? I told you that we are not bad people, but you still attack." Carola then attacked again, carrying a mighty force, as if she contained the energy of a star in her body. Link was angered by Carola's mindless attack and immediately became eager to fight. He raised his sword and made a sword flower and fought with Captain Marvel near the atmosphere. Both of them had swift and fast moves, and the fight was like fast forward, dazzling. Midona was on Link's shoulder, watching the fight with Carola. Suddenly, she hit her right palm with her left fist and suddenly realized, so that's it. Link, we are not from Earth. So this old woman thinks we have deceived her. Carola was even more angry. Not only did you destroy the planet Zelda, but you also said that I'm an old woman. If I don't beat you into pigs, how can I, Carola, who has been traveling across the interstellar for more than 30 years, survive? Exclamation mark. She immediately turned on her full strength and launched a more fierce attack. Link was in a panic and had no chance to explain to Carola. The two fought from space to the surface of the ruins of Zelda. Wherever they passed, bang bang bang. A burst of bombardment. The two strongest men in the universe fired at full power, causing even more tragic whipping of the broken Zelda. Twilight Princess drew her bow and arrowed. It's the enemy. Princess Washang also hurriedly helped her draw the bow. The arrow of light was brewing. The first princess said solemnly, "A very strong enemy." Rocket yelled, "Damn it. Groot, bring my cannon. I will bombard that bad like man." The destroyer clenched his two swords fiercely. He ran forward with the swords raised. Zelda was puzzled. The energy that destroyed this planet doesn't seem to be the same as the burning breath of the woman fighting Link. Swish. The arrow of light flew out and headed straight for Carola's head. Carola was fighting with Link happily. She hadn't encountered such a strong opponent for a long time. The more she fought, the more surprised she was. The more surprised she was, the more ruthless she attacked. And the more ruthless she was, the stronger Link's counterattack would be. The battle between the two sides became more intense. Midona shouted in the battle, "You are wrong. We are not enemies." And Carola happened to have 3 special moves dismantled by Link just now, and she was full of fighting spirit and said directly, "Whether we are enemies or not, let's finish this fight first." Link also changed the sword in his hand and stabbed like a meteor in the sky. After Carola started to attack Link, Link did not actively negotiate with Carola or explain the misunderstanding. Anyway, the fight has already started. Like Carola's strong fighting will, Link also wanted to fight with her to see how strong this strongest Avenger is. Finish the fight first and then explain. Just when Carola was concentrating on the battle, the light arrows of the two princesses stabbed quickly. Captain Marvel was immediately shocked. Not good. But how can you fight Link without going all out? So most of Carola's ideas were guided by Link. The arrow of light flew to Carola's temple in the blink of an eye, and it was about to pierce Carola's brain. At this moment, a crystal shield helped her block the arrow of light. Carola looked at Link in shock. She didn't expect that Link would help her block a fatal blow at such a fierce battle. The arrow of light was about to pierce Carola's head. She naturally knew how terrible the arrow of light was. It was not something that could be blocked by any shield. It might be life-threatening. As for making Carola confused and grateful, she didn't know why Link did this, and her hostility towards Link became chaotic. Link adjusted his posture, shield counter. The arrow of light folded a straight line and shot into the empty universe. Carola opened her eyes and looked at Link deeply. She gave up the attack and said honestly, I lost. You are better than me. Because she knew that she could not resist the domineering arrow of light. But Link could easily dismantle it, so she thought that Link's strength was far higher than hers. In fact, she misunderstood again. She was shocked by the scene of Link resisting the arrow of light with ease, and felt deeply inferior. But in fact, her pure strength is indeed stronger than Link. It's just that Link is very familiar with the arrow of light. He used to be a human target to help Twilight Princess practice archery. Although this move is very domineering in the eyes of other strong people, it is a very easy move for Link to deal with. Navi said angrily, do you know how powerful we are? You can listen to our explanation. Midona was also unhappy and said directly, violent girl. Welcome to vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 485 Yondu's request for help. Navi and Midona angrily explained their origins while accusing them. And Carola apologized very straightforwardly. I was rash. I'm sorry. After all, seeing such a beautiful planet destroyed will always make people sensitive. Then she smiled at Link and said, I didn't expect that there are such powerful guardians on Earth. This makes me, a wanderer, feel more secure in my heart. Thank you for always protecting my hometown. Link shook his head politely. Carola was a generous woman. She apologized straightforwardly and eliminated Midona and Navi's dissatisfaction. The people watching the fight on the ground saw Link and Carola shaking hands and making peace after fighting, and they all looked confused. As Carola floated down with a smile, Rocket shouted, she's still a girl. Carola explained naturally, I'm sorry, I mistook Link for the enemy who destroyed Zelda. Rocket whistled, when you and Link fought, we also thought you were the one with Gerasim. Carola's eyes sternly said, Gerasim? It seems you have found the real enemy. The first princess said, this is not an enemy, it's an enemy sword. Everyone. I'm Groot. The first princess briefly introduced the enemy. The destroyer said seriously, our enemy is a sword. So funny. Ha 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 ha. Carola couldn't help, but frowned and said, is this man kidding? Star-Lord shook his head. No, his sense of humor and cognition are out of place with ordinary people. Gamora was still thinking about Gerasim. Then where should we go to find the magic sword? At this time, another spaceship descended from the sky, which was even larger than Star-Lord's spaceship. As soon as Star-Lord looked up, his face became stiff. The dry and bold voice of Star-Lord's godfather came from the broadcasting system of the large spaceship. You little guys, why are you standing in the cemetery chatting? Star-Lord muttered, yes, I have helped you choose a foundation, which is the rotten soil under my feet. The spaceship landed, and Yondu rushed out aggressively, roaring, stinky boy, my ears are the most sensitive in the universe. I really should let my men eat you. Star-Lord put his hands on his waist and roared in Yondu's tone, eat you. Be careful not to break your teeth. He was now standing behind Link and Gamora, feeling much safer. Yondu led his men off the ship in a hurry. His men carried their weapons and stared at Star-Lord indifferently. Rocket shouted, hey, Yondu, your men are a bit irritable. Yondu said calmly, that's right. You, the Guardians of the Galaxy, are the only ones who escaped from Gerasim's hands. This made Gerasim very angry, so he sent us to capture you. He plundered the entire property of Zelda, so he was generous. Link and his men immediately started fighting. The people behind the hero immediately raised their guns and pointed them at them. Star-Lord was so angry that his chin trembled. So many people died here. Just like you said, the graveyard of the people of the Nova Alliance is under my feet. The whole planet is like this. And you chose to be an accomplice of Gerasim. Yondu patted his chest and said indifferently, don't you know what kind of person I am? Star-Lord said coldly, yes, you are a scumbag. Yondu immediately lifted his coat and remotely controlled the arrow to swish in the air for a while, and Link was stunned. Then the arrow rushed in front of Star-Lord's eyes, and if it moved forward 1 centimeter, Star-Lord's left eye would be blinded. Yondu said gloomily, you'd better let me take you away safely, because if you die, the reward will be reduced. Star-Lord gritted his teeth and turned to look at Link, only to find that Link and Carola were both calm. Carola looked at Yondu's men who were surrounding him with a fierce look and said to Link with a smile, you are more careful than me, go ahead. Link said coldly, you should be more clean, I hate the way they look at the princess. Immediately, Carolina and Link moved at the same time. Link flapped his wings and leaped up, while Carolina punched the ground with both fists. The many bandits who surrounded him burst out orange-red flames under their feet, and they all exploded into ashes. The Sky Princess carefully created a protective shield around them to isolate the ashes. Star-Lord opened his eyes wide. "You didn't tell me before you started." Link directly wiped out bullet time in the air, bypassed behind Yondu, and stabbed the terrifying bloodthirsty spider behind him with a sword, killing him. Yondu's blue face turned pale instantly, and he fell to his knees, gasping for air. It took only 2 people and less than a second for the battle to end. All the enemies, except Yondu, died one after another. Star-Lord laughed dryly. "Yondu, you dare to come to me, the great interstellar knight, with such a small number of people?" Gamora suddenly glared at Star-Lord. "Idiot." She and Carolina hurriedly helped Yondu up and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Yondu shook his head. "It's okay. Link's swordsmanship is so powerful that he didn't give the damn parasite behind me any chance to resist. If he had only half a second, I would have been poisoned to death." Star-Lord wondered, "What's going on?" Gamora sighed. "Even Groot understood it." "Don't you understand what happened?" Groot said stupidly. "I'm Groot." Rocket said angrily. "Hey, don't joke with a child." The Destroyer said seriously. "Groot is a plant, not a child." Ha 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 ha. Sky Princess explained to Star-Lord considerately. "When he released the arrow just now, didn't you see the trajectory of the arrow in the air? Wasn't it in the shape of SOS?" Star-Lord was stunned. "Help?" Yondu reluctantly said. "My fleet was captured by Jerasim. 1/3 of my brothers died, and the rest betrayed me and told me about raising you. So a bloodthirsty spider that would kill me with its fangs if I didn't obey got into my back, so I came to catch you." Yondu looked at Link with admiration again. "Boy, you're really good. How did you find the bloodthirsty spider behind me? That thing can react and bite me to death in less than half a second, and you react faster than it." Navi said. Link guessed it. Yondu's face turned even paler. Carolina asked, "You should know the news inside Jerasim, right?" Yondu nodded. "That's right. In fact, not all the people on Zelda died. 1/3 of them were abducted by Jerasim, who planned to use them to make terrible monsters to help capture the city. After a short rest, their army went to Sovereign, ready to slaughter another planet." Carolina clenched her fists. "Asshole. Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support genuine works." Chapter 486. Link's reputation is damaged. Just as they were about to leave, the spark circle reappeared, and Strange led Tony, Thor, Rogers and others out. Yondu said weakly, "These are all Earthlings. They are so fragile. What's the point of finding them?" Navi flew to Tony and said, "This fragile Earthling can hack into the controller on the top of your brain in seconds, turning you into a dancer who can only tap dance." Thor said piously, "Fragile and powerful are just 2 sides of the human heart. As long as you are willing to believe in the goddess Hylia, then." Rogers covered his face. "Please, that's enough." Tony also looked impatient. "Thor, that's enough. You can't keep bothering us like this." Yondu stared at Thor with a strange look on his face. "Asgardians? Ah, people like you must be bullied in Asgard." Thor, Vision and Scarlet Witch flew out and looked around. Scarlet Witch followed Vision and learned a not so good habit. That is, she liked to fly everywhere. Being with Vision, they are like 2 red butterflies. Vision glanced around and said quietly, "A disaster. I heard the cries of many dead souls." When the Nilaiwat witch heard about ghosts, she was so scared that she grabbed Vision's wrist and trembled. "Did you see something you shouldn't see? Don't scare me. I'm afraid of ghosts." Vision was always timid, but at this moment, she was very calm. "No, these are the remaining wills of dead lives on this planet. There's nothing to be afraid of." Tony shifted his attention to Carolina and smiled. "Who is this lady?" "Jarvis told me that you are very dangerous." Carolina smiled faintly. "Yes, I'm indeed very dangerous. My name is Carolina, an Earthling." Rogers and others looked weird all of a sudden. "Earthling?" Carolina smiled. "Yes, I haven't been back to my hometown for 30 years. I have an old friend named Nick Fury. I believe you should know him." Tony was a little unbelievable. "Oh, of course." Then his eyes shifted to Star-Lord. "It seems that there are many Earthlings wandering in the stars, right?" Rogers said with a sigh. "In my time, People looked up at the stars and wondered what kind of magical place there was in this vast starry sky. In the end, they only saw a group of lives similar to those of the people on Earth. And Carola looked at Rogers in a daze. "You, Captain America?" Rogers nodded. "It's me." Carola finally showed a look of surprise on her face. "Didn't you fall into the ice and die?" Tony said briefly. "Yes, but I didn't die completely and was dug out again. This kind of thing is very common, isn't it?" Yondu shook his head. "No, this is not common in the entire galaxy." So Star-Lord and Yondu drove their respective spaceships to Sovereign. Link and others chose the larger Yondu spaceship. Because all his men died, Yondu was very depressed. When he learned that he had to drive such a large spaceship by himself, he became even more depressed. Fortunately, Tony and Zelda were there to help, and the huge warship-like spaceship flew in the air. Yondu muttered, "When I went to Earth last time, you were still engaged in a space war." The fact that humans could fly to the moon was already shocking the world. Of course, in our eyes, they are just like primitive people. Tony raised his eyebrows. "Yes, in my eyes, other Earthlings are no different from primitive people. Because I'm not as smart as an Earthling." He never took his eyes off the control panel and was excitedly stealing information from Yondu's spaceship. Earthlings' technology has always been weak in transportation. Earth's technology has strong combat capabilities, but it is difficult to pass through the Earth. Tony quickly obtained the space jump system and parameters on Yondu's spaceship. With his level, he can quickly copy a spaceship capable of interstellar travel. Carola was talking to Rogers. Rogers described his deeds lightly. Carola admired sincerely. "Spanning 70 years, you can actually endure and not have a mental breakdown. The government's praise for you is fair." Rogers set his eyes on Link, who was playing with the princesses. "This child, his experience is worse than mine." Carola hesitated. "What kind of experience have these fellows on Earth experienced?" Vision looked at Carola timidly. Carola looked directly at Vision and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Vision said, "Did you also fight with Link?" Carola's face turned embarrassed. "How do you know?" Vision said, "You are full of the breath of light power." She said sympathetically, "Link didn't do anything to you?" Carola felt embarrassed and raised her chin and said, "No, Link and I tied." Tony turned his head suddenly. "What?" Carola stared at Tony. "Why are you yelling so loudly?" Thor hurried over, and Rogers also had an expression, as if he had eaten an unpeeled durian. "You tied with Link?" Carola curled her lips. A little inferior." Scarlet Witch and Vision met each other and looked at Carola with admiration. "You are so strong. You are really a role model for women." Carola asked puzzledly, "I just tied with Link and didn't beat him. There is no need to say that to me, right?" Roger smiled. "No, you don't understand how amazing it is to be able to tie with Link. Your strength is really amazing." Vision added fuel to the fire. But all of us have been bullied by Link. Everyone is afraid of him." Link's long ears moved, and he looked back with squinted eyes. Midona was even more direct, pointing at Vision and saying, "It's this girl again. She's the one who's saying bad things about you." Vision screamed and hurriedly ran to grab Tona's hand. "Boss Stark, protect me." Tony hurriedly shouted, "Don't move. I just shifted a light year." Carola felt that she should get to know Link again. This boy doesn't seem as pure as he seems. On the planet Sovereign, the High Priest was nervously organizing his men to prepare for war. Her golden face turned pale with anger. To a large extent, it was fear. These rude guys dared to come and defend us. But the tragedy of the Nova Alliance has already made the High Priest know the horror of Jerasim. She was filled with fear. Below her stage was an empty conference hall where the carefully selected warriors, esports masters, on the planet were sitting in the console, ready for battle. Everyone's face was filled with golden fear. Welcome to vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 487 Vision, come here. I won't hit you. They are coming. The subordinates shouted in fear. The High Priest saw a large number of black legions appearing in the starry sky on the screen, rushing over in a black mass. Her staff immediately assessed the other side's combat strength and said in fear, "The strength of their fleet is at least 10 times that of ours." The High Priest immediately grabbed the staff's throat. "Why are you making such a loud noise?" The staff soon discovered that, because of his voice, the esports masters in the audience were rioting. The commander immediately calmed everyone down, but still caused some people to flee. The panic spread even more. The high priest bit her lip. She knew very well. Her army mainly relied on remote control of combat spacecraft, and the commander could not be harmed. But the mentality of fear would still greatly reduce the controllability of her subordinates. Moreover, this kind of remote control of all soldiers has a very serious hidden danger. That is, the commander has not experienced actual combat, so the discipline and mentality are extremely poor. Therefore, a large number of commanders defected, and the high priest has no effective means of control. At this time, the staff immediately received a strange message. He immediately reported to the high priest, "We received a message from the universe, saying that they can help us defeat Gerasim." The high priest hurriedly said, "Hurry up and connect." Tony's handsome face immediately appeared on the screen. The image of this romantic old man immediately surprised the high priest. Tony was also surprised. He complained to Yondu beside him, "Are all the people on this planet so golden? I bet the sunglasses I sell to them on Earth will definitely sell well." The high priest put on airs very skillfully and said arrogantly, "Wanderer from an alien planet, I heard that you have the ability to help Sovereign defeat Gerasim?" Tony shook his head, "We are not sure, but it should not be difficult." The high priest was furious, "Then you are teasing me." Tony smiled and said, "Send us the intelligence of the Gerasim army that you monitored. Let us see his arrangement. Maybe it can help you." Because the high priest did not give the high priest a sense of security at the first time, the high priest did not trust Tony and others. But he still informed Tony of the intelligence about the Gerasim army that he had obtained. Tony hummed a song, looked through it carefully, looked up and said with a casual smile, "No problem. Leave it to us. You are responsible for containing the main force of the Gerasim army, and we will attack from behind." The high priest asked hurriedly, "How many troops do you have?" Tony smiled brightly, "Less than 20. The high priest. Then he became furious, "Less than 20 people. It's useless. How dare you tease me?" Tony raised his head proudly and looked down at the high priest. "You'd better not underestimate your future savior. We only need 20 people." Tony quickly raised his hand and pointed his index finger at the high priest. "This noble woman, please think about how to thank my companions afterwards." Then he turned off the communication in an instant. The high priestess was stunned, and the staff officer asked anxiously, "High priestess, do you think this group of mysterious people can really help us defeat Gerasim?" The high priestess's mind was full of Tony's figure and eyes, and she said in a daze, "So handsome." The staff officer was stunned. "What?" The high priestess hurriedly said, "Nothing. We have arranged to find them. Otherwise, what can we do?" Tony turned off the video, and then he received complaints from Star-Lord and others. "Can't you mention the Guardians of the Galaxy? Such a good time for advertising." Vision also pulled Tony's arm eagerly, like a little child. "I also want to talk to aliens." Tony said sullenly, "You go and talk to Thor. Anyway, he is an alien. Yondu is okay." Vision shook his head. "Thor has been so weird recently, and Yondu will eat people." Yondu laughed and said, "Little girl, you are so funny. You believe me when I lied to Star-Lord?" He tried to show a kind expression and grinned. As a result, his two jagged sharp teeth made Vision even more nervous. Tony looked at the cute Vision and thought to himself, "If I have a child, it's better to be a girl." Rogers and Carol analyzed the intelligence about Gerasim received from Sovereign. The first princess looked at the picture in the dark aura and said, "It's the power of the end. Gerasim is using the power of the end to infect the life on the stars, turning them into monsters, forming a powerful military force." Rogers asked, "You mean these armies are all bewitched by Gerasim? Then can these innocent people be restored?" The first princess shook her head regretfully. "No, their bodies have changed. Even if their lost minds are restored, it is a cruel punishment for them to let their normal souls rest on their distorted bodies." She pursed her lips. "But we can still save the remaining survivors. We must not let this disaster continue to expand. I swear in the name of Goddess Hylia." Rogers pointed to the giant fleet that Gerasim had put together. "Their flagship is in the center, and the internal capacity is huge. The survivors of Zelda that they captured are inside. Our main goal is to defeat Gerasim and rescue the survivors inside." Carola said, "Link and I will force our way in and do a decapitation operation." The first generation princess shook her head. No. You see, outside, Gerasim has set up a large number of troops to guard. These people who are bewitched by the power of the end are all connected to the magic sword Gerasim. Although they are a temporarily put together army, they are actually more like prosthetic limbs controlled by Gerasim. Once we break in, we will be besieged and concentrated fire very quickly. It's very dangerous. She clicked on an interface and the intelligence, which showed the number of Gerasim troops. 10 million. 10 million people, 2 people on each combat spaceship. These people are organized by Gerasim into an ant colony-like ecosystem. This is not an army, but a unified giant magic shadow controlled by Gerasim. Link came over, his eyes shining as he pondered. The first princess smiled and said softly, Link, have you found any way to crack it? Navi said, Link is thinking about it. How does Gerasim control so many people? The first princess shook her head. Yes. Use the power of the end to form a spider web-like vein to connect everyone's hearts together. Link's eyes lit up and he looked at Vision happily. Navi immediately said, Vision, come here. Vision was frightened at once. She said warily, that, you are so vindictive? Can't I apologize to you? Welcome to subscribe and vote to support genuine works. Chapter 488 Zelda's Transformation, Zelda's Complete Form. Vision looked like a little chicken, and it seemed that her paranoid delusion that Link might bite her had recurred. Navi continued, not only Vision, but also you, Wanda. Scarlet Witch's face also became strange. Link, what are you going to do? Midona yawned and said, remember the big surprise you made in Stark Tower? Everyone was scared by you. Navi said, Link wants you two to create a terrifying illusion for Gerasim's army. They will spread the terrifying spirit to Gerasim and cause the collapse of the entire army system. Rogers was stunned. That's a good idea. Tony said, let Wanda be a virus? That's a good idea. Gerasim must be struggling to maintain such an unprecedentedly large army. Scarlet Witch said, well, although my ability has been greatly enhanced recently, but you know, Vision and I combined cannot spread this scale of coverage. The radius of my ability is very small compared to the entire vast universe. Vision bit his finger and estimated, no. If we only create illusions for a very small part of the army, it will only make Gerasim alert faster. At that time, he only needs to immediately cut off the connection with the infected army to escape. Carola said, we will escort you to the position of the nearby flagship and directly attack the heart of Gerasim and the entire military system. Inject venom directly into the enemy's heart. The first generation princess said, but the premise is that we must go straight to the core of the military system. We don't have such ability. Besides, since we can hit the enemy's internal core, why should we ask Wanda to use the terrifying environment to interfere? We can just go further into the flagship. Navi said regretfully, it's a pity that my stealth skill can only work on Link. If I can give it to you, just sneak the two girls over. Princess Washang said, even so, it's not realistic. You are Link's guardian elf, and Gerasim can't be unaware of you. Navi suddenly shouted again. Link said he has a stupid way. Carola couldn't help asking, why didn't Link speak himself? It's always you, a little ball of light, who delivers the message. Midona said lazily, for Link, speaking is more tiring than fighting. Navi was full of admiration for Link's silence. This shows that Link is a man of action. Midona sneered at Navi, what about you? You chatter all day long, and you're a 95% bullshitter? Navi was just a small ball of light with two small wings. But it was obvious that she was angry. Am I noisy? I don't talk much, okay? What I say is very efficient and makes sense, okay? Just when Navi was about to have a good argument with Midona again, Navi once again felt Link's will to let her deliver the message. So she said responsibly, Link's idea is for us to attack everywhere and attract this army. Let them hit the troops to destroy them. The first princess thought, that's right, if the army of Gerasim is involved, the concentration of troops in an area will be too high. Wanda's skills will be able to affect enough people. Carola still had doubts. She looked at Wanda and said, such a little girl. Can she really use that illusion to affect an army of 10 million? Vision immediately said, Wanda is very powerful. Scarlet Witch also said, I'm very powerful. Zelda looked at the information transmitted by Sovereign and said, now this army of unprecedented scale is connected by Gerasim alone. The panic caused by Wanda to one person will be transmitted to others, and the panic of the people will be transmitted to each other, forming a wave of amplification. Zelda said, if controlled well, then Wanda will become a big killer. Wanda frowned. Big killer? That sounds bad. I should be a first-class superhero who can influence the situation of the war. The princesses smiled. The first princess smiled and said, if that's the case, let's take action. This time it's not a fight to the death, but a game of flying a kite. Tony came over and said, me, Link, Thor, Star-Lord's spaceship, and Yondu's spaceship can all recruit a certain amount of troops. Let's notify Star-Lord to take action. The first princess smiled and said, we'll go too. Link was stunned, and Navi hurriedly said, princess, you should stay in the spaceship. Otherwise, Link will feel very insecure. But the 5 princesses shook their heads, and their figures first glowed, and then they merged together, and the light flashed, forming the same Zelda. I saw a beautiful girl walking out of the blooming light. She was quiet and calm, like a god, as if she was the incarnation of the goddess Hylia. People can't help but have the urge to worship her. Her appearance is a collection of all the beauty of Princess Zelda, and the combination of moving forms another breathtaking and stunning beauty. This kind of face should not belong to the human world, but rather a goddess that flew from a distant land. Zelda looked at Link, smiling at him, with 2 slender hands, gently pinching the skirt made of starlight, slowly spinning, so beautiful that people could not take their eyes away. She smiled and said, Link, I don't look strange, do I? Link recovered from his trance, shook his head hurriedly, and his cheeks were a little red. He hurriedly looked at the people around him, and they were also shocked. This group of people had experienced big scenes, but now they were scared by a girl. Except for Corolla and Yondu, everyone knew that Zelda was a girl with the blood of the goddess, just as Link had the soul of a hero. But the so-called blood of the goddess brought what kind of difference to Zelda, but few people saw it directly. Until today, Zelda seemed to be the incarnation of the goddess, full of holy breath. Everyone's heart was filled with a strong desire and love to protect her, and this love did not contain any selfish desires. The sword of the unparalleled princess appeared in Zelda's hand, and her temperament suddenly became cold. She said to Link, as I'm now, I will cause great panic to Gerasim. His power of the end will find me, and will not hesitate to send a large number of troops to destroy me. I can attract a large number of troops. Link, you don't have to worry about me. Even if you are not by my side, everything you have given me will always protect me, keep me safe, and give me peace of mind. Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support genuine works. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 489 Supergroup Attack. Gerasim sat in the huge flagship. He no longer had a human form. He had returned to his original magic sword style. This big sword with a fang-bearing claw shape was inserted on the central stone platform of a blood pool, spreading his will, and the power of the end spread along with his will. 10 million troops and an unprecedentedly powerful team made up of various planets. All were controlled by Gerasim's will. These people came from various planets in the Milky Way. They were good people and bad people. Regardless of good or bad, they were invaded by Gerasim's evil thoughts and turned into hideous monsters. They were used by Gerasim and became slaves of the Lord of the End. These slaves were like the tentacles of an octopus, searching for information around them. Just now, Gerasim suddenly detected an extremely holy breath. It made him so frightened that his whole body spasmed, a sword was spasming, and at the same time, a huge fear attacked his dark heart. What is this? Exclamation mark. Did the goddess Hylia come here to attack me? Impossible. Goddess Hylia cannot directly interfere with the real world. But where does this incredible godlike pressure come from? Gerasim panicked, and he quickly made the eyes of the marginal army become his eyes, looking for the source of this breath. That made him so afraid. Soon, He saw Zelda standing above the starry sky, holding a long sword, like a god descending to the earth, looking at her quietly. Jirasim's mood was like a poisonous mushroom exploding in the scorching sun, escaping from the dark environment. Just looking into Zelda's eyes, he felt a kind of inner collapse. This holy existence made Jirasim very confused, so that he was full of a sense of crisis. He roared, "Since you are overestimating your own abilities and running to die, then I will capture you and give you to my great end, who has not yet returned, to clarify my enthusiasm for darkness." So he immediately dispatched a large number of troops to encircle Zelda. Zelda turned around and left quickly. Jirasim would not let go. This holy existence made Jirasim uncomfortable just by its existence. Bang! His will turned to the other side. Link held the sword in both hands, waving the sword energy like fireworks falling to the ground, and attacked quickly from the rear. Once he entered the enemy's encirclement, he attacked vigorously. Almost in an instant, one person posed a great threat to the fleet of 10,000 people. So Jirasim also angrily ordered the army to go and capture them. Bang! Tony, Corolla, Yondu's spaceship, and Star-Lord's spaceship attacked Jirasim's army from different directions. Jirasim immediately became alert. So that's how it is. They want to gradually divide my army and then attack my flagship with weak defense? He then grinned and said, "How can a mouse tease a cat? Look at me, I will surround you all in a blind spot and play with you one by one to death." So 1/3 of the warships went to chase. Sure enough, Zelda and others did not plan to attack, but only knew to escape. Jirasim was even more contemptuous. He planned the army, and from a big vision, he had already confined Link and the others' escape route in the same space. Slowly, they formed a siege. Jirasim prayed in his heart, "Great Master, you don't need to fight a battle that will damage your dignity." The boy with the soul of a warrior and the girl with the blood of a goddess are already running around in the dark power of me and loneliness. His heart, which was frightened by Zelda's appearance, calmed down as he surrounded them smoothly. At this time, Midona also shouted excitedly, "Success! These guys like mad cows have been attracted to the same point by us." In this way, the mental attacks of Vision and Scarlet Witch can exert their greatest power. Jirasim was still ecstatic because his army had formed a siege network that covered the top, bottom, left, right, east, west, and northwest. As long as the warships launched attacks together, this small team of less than 20 people will suffer an unprecedented firepower attack in history. Star-Lord looked at the overwhelming Jirasim army and was a little worried. There are so many people just eating food. They can eat up a planet every day, right? Can that little red-haired girl really do it? The destroyer said with a deep face. Of course she can do it. Gamora looked at the destroyer strangely. "I see you want to say something embarrassing again." The destroyer said seriously, "If it doesn't work, we don't have to think about this problem." Rocket covered his head. Headache. Roger shouted, "Wanda, Vision, are you ready?" Wanda was very scared. She floated out tremblingly and was held by Vision to the center of the encirclement. Vision looked at the sky full of armies that had prepared a unified launch attack process, but his heart was calm. Vision has always been calm, except when he met Link. "We will succeed. You just need to put your power into my mind gem, and then let me spread it out. Don't think too much." Vision's words were indescribably infectious, and Scarlet Witch calmed down incredibly. She closed her eyes, and then Vision pressed her forehead against hers and hugged each other. The yellow mind gem glowed faintly. Suddenly, the heads of the two cute girls were filled with yellow light, and their two completely different brain structures were clearly visible under the yellow light. Roger said softly to Yondu, "You'd better lie down first. Wanda's attack may hurt you by mistake." Yondu smiled. "It's ridiculous. This little girl can scare me. I've never been afraid in my life." As soon as he finished speaking, his face stiffened, and his eyes fell into darkness. He recalled a past that he couldn't bear to look back on, because Wanda began to launch her illusion. Jirasim prepared all the warships to launch an attack together, but the Scarlet Witch's silent and invisible mental attack was almost at the speed of light. In an instant, with her as the center, with the help of Vision's mind gem, the Jirasim army surrounded outside was infected by the Scarlet Witch one after another. The panic and the source of fear in the heart were stirred up by the scarlet power, just like a spark blown by the wind, and a raging fire was immediately ignited. The army lost control one after another, because their minds were connected to each other by Gerasim. So the fears of each other interfered with each other. The warship collapsed at an exponential rate in an instant, and Gerasim didn't even have time to cut off his will. The mind was buzzing, and the mind was overwhelmed by the terror stirred by the waves. Welcome to Vote and Subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 490, How to Control the Magic Sword. Success. Link was excited, and he and Zelda looked at each other from a distance. They both saw the same idea in each other's eyes. So he immediately flapped his wings and flew to the flagship of the Gerasim army. There were paralyzed warships everywhere around, and Link and Zelda flew through them. Because there was no air resistance, their speeds reached the peak at the same time. At this speed, Zelda was still like a beautiful fairy in the phantom water world in a dream. This made the huge fleet of warships used by Gerasim to show off their power add a touch of beauty to the solemn atmosphere. Vision and Scarlet Witch quietly put their heads together and depended on each other. Vision's brows began to frown, and her mind was constantly backfired by those who were mentally polluted. Her eyes were full of horrible hallucinations. As Vision, a mind gem owner, she felt fine at first, but then she was shaken. This level of mental backlash, so that the mind gem was shaking, there were signs of shaking. Vision's life was all on that golden gem, and she would feel uncomfortable if the gem shook. This kind of invisible and intangible soft knife mental repression is the most torturous. But she must hold on, because if she does not resist this wave of heavy backlash, the one who will bear it will be the Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch's mental power is far less powerful than Vision's. Even Vision can't resist it, and the Scarlet Witch's situation will be even worse. She gritted her teeth and held on. In the extreme pain, Vision couldn't help but think, isn't Link mentally strong? Can he endure this kind of pain? Relieve the discomfort by distracting attention. But soon, even if she was distracted deliberately, her pain was difficult to suppress. Her body was shaking, and the Mind Stone was almost half out of control. Vision said bitterly in his heart, "Who will help me? Please." At this moment, Zelda, who was attacking the Gerasim flagship with Link, closed one eye and saw the scene in Vision's mind. It was a place where demons were dancing wildly. Zelda said softly, "Vision, can you hear me? Don't panic. I will protect you. You are safe." Zelda's voice, which combined the beautiful characteristics of the 5 princesses, reached Vision's trembling heart. It was like a clear spring pouring on the dry land. Vision, who was feeling suffocated, finally got a moment to breathe. Vision said blankly in his heart, "Princess, are you helping me resist the backlash of the spirit? No. You are too weak, and your heart will be polluted by the grey emotions. Come on, let me." Zelda said softly, "These are the hearts of the poor people who were killed by Gerasim and the end behind him. They undoubtedly hurt me, but the fluctuations of their inner pain moved us. These are not hostility." Vision was moved, and Zelda's gentle soul power was actually soothing the grey spirits that were backlashing towards Vision. Vision also immediately used his own powerful Mind Stone power to help Zelda calm down. Zelda had a smile on her face. That child, it seems that his understanding of his own power has deepened. This mental backlash is not a bad thing for Vision. This oppression forces her to dig deeper into her own power. As the personification of the Mind Stone, Vision has a lot of room for improvement. Link holds the Dragon Soul Great Sword and even does not need Fang's help. She is sleeping in. He suddenly swiped out a huge sword energy. If this sword energy appeared on Earth, at least people in a small American town would be unable to see the sky. This is Link's power now. Zelda's beautiful eyes moved, and she recalled the scene in the memory of the Washan princess, when she and Link swung their sword energy at the Chitauri army. Those two huge sword energies are still fresh in the memory of many people to this day. This is the first time that the Avengers launched a public collective attack, bringing an iconic picture to the world. Bang! The huge sword energy immediately cut a terrible wound on the flagship, just like an axe violently cutting a tree trunk. If Link hadn't held back, his strength could even cut the asteroid-like flagship in half. But in this way, the large number of survivors captured by Gerasim inside would be doomed. Link gently embraced Zelda's waist. Zelda's temperament changed drastically, making Link's movements extremely cautious, as if he was holding a wisp of mist, fearing that Zelda was illusory, to help Zelda eliminate the force of the high-speed sprint. Zelda whispered, "Let's go. The last enemy is inside." Due to the Scarlet Witch's role, the defense personnel in the flagship lost their combat capabilities one after another. Link rushed into the main control room unimpeded. I saw the human form of Jerasim kneeling on the ground and shouting loudly. His voice was so unpleasant that Link wanted to cover Zelda's ears. Jerasim's body was like the afterimage in an old TV, constantly distorting and deforming. He was frightened by Zelda's pure aura of light and woke up immediately. Link drew out the Master Sword and walked over calmly. The ferocity in Jerasim's body burst out completely, and he rushed over like a madman. The aura on his body was like a swamp. Jerasim was originally a demonic life form, and after being disturbed by the terrifying environment of the Scarlet Witch, it became even crazier. Instead, it brought him a huge amount of energy increase. As soon as he moved, the entire main control room made a loud noise. The walls, ceiling, and floor were all metal products used by the Sky Army, but at this moment, they collapsed and twisted under the invisible power of the end. Zelda frowned and whispered, "Link, make it small." Link waved his hand casually, indicating that there was no need to worry. Indeed, Jerasim became more crazy and more dangerous because of the influence of the Scarlet Witch's illusion. But, looking at Jerasim rushing towards him like a poisonous arrow, even Odin would face it seriously. But Link raised his sword calmly, relaxed his body, and gathered his strength. Swish. A stab. Link's eyes were filled with golden light, and the sword suddenly thrust out. It was the stab he learned from the skeleton swordsman. The plain and invisible sword light spurted out. Jerasim, who was rushing over, stopped immediately and could not get close to Link. The madness in his eyes disappeared completely, and he lowered his head blankly, only to see a vertical crack on his chest, which was releasing light. The crack expanded with the light. Not bad. A brave man of this era. Jerasim looked at Link in shock. Link had already taken back the Master Sword indifferently, and looked at Jerasim quietly. Bang! A golden sword light burst out from Jerasim's body. His humanoid body was immediately disintegrated, and his origin was forced out. The magic sword. Link immediately reached out to the magic sword. Welcome to vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 491. Purifying the Demon Sword. Link collects the share. Link reached out and grabbed the magic sword. The sword was extremely flamboyant and unrestrained, full of oppression and evil, but when paired with Link, it looked unexpectedly handsome. His palm was small and white and tender like a girl's hand, but those who knew him would not doubt Link's strength. Jerasim was beaten back to its original form by Link, and the magic sword wavered and wanted to run away. But would Link let him escape so easily? The sharp sword energy was immediately released in his hand, and Faye's figure appeared behind Link. Under the joint pressure of Link's sword energy and Faye's sword soul, Jerasim in the magic sword screamed silently. The magic sword was trembling, and the sword body kept emitting sounds similar to ghost cries. Finally, under the suppression of Link's powerful light power, Jerasim's soul was completely dissolved. The magic sword lost its soul and stopped struggling, lying quietly in Link's palm. Link tried to swing the magic sword twice in the air, somewhat dissatisfied with the feel of the magic sword. This sword was too light for him. Even if Jerasim's soul dissolved, the magic sword had no soul. This weapon that originally belonged to the Ender still exuded an indelible evil spirit. Only Link and Zelda were present. If it were someone else, if they were to stay close to the magic sword for a long time, I'm afraid that the kindness in their hearts would be affected by the magic sword and become an evil creature like Jerasim. It is worthy of being the sword worn by the Ender, the original Demon King. While Link sighed, he knew that this sword was harmful and useless. So he summoned the sword of the ancient hero and destroyed the magic sword entity by the power of attribute restraint. But Zelda stopped him and said softly, "Link, don't destroy it yet, give me this sword." So Link handed the sword over. Not to mention the evil spirit of the magic sword, even if the Ender was next to it, it would not affect Zelda's mind. Jerasim's soul shattered and dissolved, and Link was not worried about accidents. So Zelda took the magic sword. The magic sword goes well with Link, But when Zelda holds it, it's like wearing a formal dress and holding a submachine gun. Zelda whispered, "The magic sword, evil is rooted in the soul, but it's just a weapon." She raised the magic sword high and chanted, "The poor people demonized by Giraffim, the killed and imprisoned creatures, float in this lonely starfield. Even if the starfield is wide, it can't contain the sadness caused by this tragedy. That shouldn't have happened. In the name of the goddess Hylia, let the demonized people be freed, let the killed people rest in peace, let the imprisoned people be liberated, and let the sword-carrying Malice pay for the sins he has committed forever." Boom. The magic sword suddenly glowed. Link was shocked. You know, he and Faye had just joined forces, but they couldn't drive away the evil nature of the magic sword. But now in Zelda's hands, the evil nature has disappeared. In the glow, the lines of the magic sword became softer. Zelda's pure power made the magic sword undergo a fundamental change. Zelda looked at the new sword carefully. It can't be called the magic sword now. It should be named a new name. Then let's call it the Sword of Redemption. Releasing her fingers, Zelda shouted softly, "Go." The reborn Sword of Redemption flew into outer space like Yondu's arrow. Zelda said softly, "Sword of Redemption, carry my power, and let those demonized soldiers in the outside world be freed." Link remained silent. This was a very heavy topic. Zelda also realized it, and hurriedly smiled and changed the subject. "By the way, Link, your strength seems to have improved again." Link looked directly into Zelda's eyes. He and Zelda have a very close relationship, and they can communicate directly with their eyes. Zelda was a little puzzled. "Because of me?" Zelda now seemed like the goddess Hylia, so holy that people dared not look directly at her. With such a strange expression, she was really cute and heart-pounding. Midona explained, "Because you Zelda smurged together. Have you forgotten? There is that kind of connection between you and Link. When you become stronger, Link becomes stronger too. It feels like Link is collecting rent." Previously, Link wanted to urge the princesses to work hard like a high school student, so as to bring him a lot of power. At first, Link did the same thing. The princesses were forced to be busy all day by Link, and they were miserable. They were also very considerate, and did not dare to let Link down. With the efforts of the princesses, Link did obtain a lot of certificates of mission and order. But after all, Link loved the princesses so much that he could not bear to leave after a long time. So the princesses will soon regain their freedom. This time, the 5 Zeldas merged into one, once again bringing Link a powerful increase. The end of the universe, the edge. Here is the unknown limit of human beings. Because at the edge, even the conventional laws of physics are slightly different. The end of the world is like a cheetah dragging the carcass of its prey to a tree to eat safely, digesting Ganon's remaining body in the darkness. Suddenly, with a bang, he found that Gerasim had lost contact. His heart sank immediately, and he immediately knew that Gerasim had died, and even his soul had dissipated into the most basic particles. The Ender's mood became gloomy. Link, a mortal who doesn't know whether to live or die. This disturbed his good mood since his rebirth, but he still didn't care much. He thought to himself, "Forget it. I will devour Ganon's soul first. Anyway, Gerasim's soul is dead. As long as the body of the magic sword is still there, I can make him reborn again." Unfortunately, the Ender didn't know that even the body of the magic sword was purified by Zelda. Otherwise, he would not just react like this, but would be furious. When Sovereign's video game army arrived, they were terrified and waiting for a desperate fight, but they were told by Star-Lord's spaceship, "The battle is over. Come and help collect the victims and survivors." The High Priest looked confused in front of the screen. "Where is the war? Where is the enemy? I've been worried for so long, but in the end there's no battle to fight." After a detailed explanation by Star-Lord and others, the conference hall where the High Priest was silent. They couldn't imagine that a powerful army of this magnitude would collapse in an instant, or it was just relying on this small team of less than 20 people that was put together at random. So the planet Sovereign helped to properly resettle the survivors in shock and confusion. The 2 girls, Vision and Scarlet Witch, are very proud now, because they, not Link, are the ones who have influenced the situation in this battle, which is extremely rare in the Avengers. Tony was annoyed by the quarrels of the 2 girls and asked, "Tell me, what reward do you want? Welcome to vote and subscribe to support genuine works." Chapter 492 Captain Marvel returns to Earth. When the survivors were properly resettled, the Avengers realized what a job harder than a life and death battle meant. The mess caused by Jerasim was quite astonishing. Not only Zelda, but also some suitable planets with low civilizations were destroyed. A huge number of survivors were imprisoned in the flagship at a high density, which was half of the residents of Zelda. Not to mention proper resettlement, even keeping them from falling into chaos was an extremely difficult task. The busiest one was Vision, who had to fly over the heads of the survivors all day long, using the power of the Mind Stone, to comfort these poor people whose country and family had been destroyed. Vision was so tired that he lost weight. Fortunately, there was the help of the planet Sovereign, otherwise half of the survivors of Zelda, plus the survivors of other planets, would make Link and others busy for a lifetime and difficult to deal with. Finally, Rogers and others discussed with the surviving senior officials of the Nova Alliance. The Xander people were in grief, but their will was very firm. They wanted to return to their homeland Xander, the planet that had become a ruin, and rebuild their home. So a preliminary discussion was held. The Nova Alliance returned to Xander to rebuild their homeland, while the survivors on the other planets were evacuated to the surrounding civilized planets. High Priest Sovereign also breathed a sigh of relief, and generously told the Nova Alliance that he was willing to provide them with initial supplies. Why was this arrogant woman with a golden body so straightforward? The reason was of course Link and Zelda. They wanted Sovereign to accept these huge numbers of survivors. This would undoubtedly bring a great burden to Sovereign. The High Priest was in a difficult situation, and Link knew this, so he showed a tough attitude. After all, if the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy had not arrived in time, Sovereign would have faced the same tragic solution. So Link's compulsion was justified. Seeing that everyone on Xander wanted to return to their homeland, High Priest Sovereign breathed a sigh of relief. The migration work was going smoothly. Due to the expansion of Jerasim, all the civilized planets in this starfield were extremely terrifying, so they were sympathized by the survivors on Xander and other planets, and were willing to help. Of course, there are also people with ulterior motives. However, these people and forces were shocked by Link, Thor, Corolla and others. It really took a week. The Avengers and others managed to properly relocate everyone to Xander. Just when they were about to leave, they encountered another trouble. That was the sad retention of the people of Xander. When they heard that Link and others were leaving, the sense of security of the people of Xander suddenly dissipated, and they surrounded them, not wanting Link and others to leave, hoping that they could continue to guard here. Because Link was the one who killed Jerasim, in order to retain Link, Xander was even willing to let Link become the king of Xander, and people from all over the planet worshipped him. If it was someone else, they would definitely not be able to withstand such a temptation. But Link's view on power was very light, and he still refused very firmly. But now there is no defense force on Xander, and just leaving like this might arouse a covetousness of alien ambitionists. Finally, at Zelda's suggestion, the Guardians of the Galaxy stayed here temporarily, to guard the planet until they re-established their own defense force. Oh, and there is Yondu. Yondu's team collapsed, and he became a lonely man, and he was particularly depressed. But during this time, his relationship with Star-Lord was reconciled to a great extent. He also temporarily joined the Guardians of the Galaxy, and said that he would not take Star-Lord's position as captain. As for Corolla, she was so busy that she hadn't been back to Earth for more than 30 years. This time she decided to go back to Earth to see her friends. Zelda also had a sudden idea and wanted Thor to move his people to Xander. The powerful Asgardians can get a larger territory, and the Xander people can get strong protection. But Thor refused without thinking. He wanted to take back his hometown. As for the power gem deposited in the Nova Alliance, it disappeared in this catastrophe, which made the Avengers worried. Finally, it was time to leave. The people of Xander held a grand farewell ceremony for Link and others, and gave the Avengers and others a suitcase, but told them to open it when they got to Earth. Tony squinted at the sincere Xander with suspicious eyes and said, "Did you secretly put Durian in there to play a prank on us?" The Xander's smile froze. Durian? What is this?" Scarlet Witch took a small mirror to look at her face and said with a sad face, "Come back soon. My skin has become so bad here." Vision comforted her, "You are still very cute." Star-Lord frightened Scarlet Witch. The climate and air quality here are very strange. Girls who stay here for a long time will turn their faces green. Just like Gamora. Scarlet Witch was stunned. Gamora took out a dagger with a calm face and chased Star-Lord everywhere. Strange said, "Let's go." So everyone stepped into the Spark Circle, and in one step, they returned to the Avengers base on Earth. They saw Loki and Pepper sitting on the sofa, watching TV and eating apples. Seeing the dusty people coming back, Pepper called out sweetly, "You're back." Then he stretched out his two little hands and flew over happily. Tony smiled tiredly. "Yes, you want a hug? Many women can testify that my arms are very comfortable." Roger said, "Don't be so self-indulgent." He showed a gentle smile and opened his arms to hug Pepper. "Brave man." Roger's face froze, and Pepper ran into Link's arms behind him, and his two little tentacles swayed happily from side to side. Link smiled and touched Pepper's head, and Midona also smiled and stretched out her hand, saying, "Good boy, good boy." Tony stepped forward and patted Rogers, who was hit hard. Both of them were very depressed at the moment. Thor looked at Loki with fear. "Did you make trouble during the days I was away?" Loki smiled and spread his hands. "My mother and I were together, and we didn't do anything else, except discussing how to get you out of Asgard." Thor snorted coldly. "Rhodes happened to be there today, and came over to ask, Tony, the World Security Council is going crazy these days, when you guys are missing." Tony said indifferently, "I just went on vacation deep in the Milky Way. By the way, please help me carry this thing, it's so heavy." Rhodes took the suitcase from Tony and asked, "What is this?" Tony said, "A gift. Open it and take a look. Welcome to vote and subscribe to support genuine works." Chapter 493, The Ewan Devouring Beast. Because Zelda is 5-in-1, Pepper is looking at her curiously, but he dare not get close. The suitcase is made of pure silver metal, and the silver contains a strange texture. The shape is completely different from the style on Earth. When Rod took it, he didn't feel it was too heavy, and it didn't match the volume on the surface. He also felt a gurgling sound inside the suitcase. Rod looked at Tony with suspicion. "You didn't put something in it to scare me." Tony looked innocent. "You think of me like this? Please, it was not me who put the banana in the Iron Patriot last time." Pepper was in Link's arms. Hearing Tony's words, he hurriedly said, "It wasn't Pepper who did it." Finally found the culprit. Then Rod glared at him angrily. "But adults don't care. Haha." Rod can't settle accounts with Pepper. He opened the suitcase and heard a series of bangs. Before Rod could see what came out of it, his jaw was hit hard, and he felt dizzy and couldn't breathe for a while. He was stunned on the ground for a moment and was about to yell at Tony, but he saw the suitcase flipping like a transformer and turned into a 2-meter high workbench in the blink of an eye. Rhodes shouted, "What the hell is this thing?" Carola took one look and said, "This is a supercomputer from Zelda. It can simulate some scientific experiments that human technology cannot do." Tony's eyes lit up. "Wow, this is a great thing. I like this gift very much. Jarvis, come and analyze the performance of this supercomputer. Be careful, it's imported." Zelda asked, "What's the use? I feel that the electronic computing power of other planets cannot compare to your Jarvis." Carola shook her head and said, "It's not the same thing. This should be the Kree technology stolen by the Nova Alliance. This thing is very precious. I didn't expect it to survive the disaster of Jerasim. It seems that the people of Zelda are sincerely grateful to you, so they gave you such a precious item." Tony nodded. "With this guy, Stark's technology can be iterated for at least 5 generations. I can even announce that the quantum machine can be completed in 2 weeks." Zelda was surprised and said, "So fast?" Carola looked around and took a deep breath. "This is the air on Earth?" Rhodes asked Tony quietly, "So this woman is stupid?" Carola glanced at Rod. "I have been away from Earth for more than 30 years. Rod was startled. "How old are you this year?" Carola smiled. "I don't age well. By the way, where is Nick Fury? Isn't he your work partner? Has he been promoted?" Tony nodded. "He was promoted to the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and now he is retired." Carola said, "I will go find him." Bang, the whole body released a burning light and flew into the air. Rod covered his head. "This woman is very impetuous. If she flies around like this, it will cause chaos in New York." Natasha shook her head. Haha, New Yorkers are very calm. They have experienced too much. Carola happily ran to find Nick, and there was a prosperous city below her. Although the earth looks not much different from when she left, some changes in style still make her quite sigh. At this moment, although Nick is retired, he does not enjoy his pension to go fishing and traveling all day. He still wore a thick windbreaker in the hot weather, carrying out missions everywhere, always with an expression of "I'm doing great things." It was noon, and he and Agent Hill, Tony could only turn a blind eye, forgive her, were in the car, preparing to go to a secret experimental institution. Perhaps because of his age, Nick had a cool expression on his face, bragging to Hill about his experience when he was young. My eyes were blinded when I was tortured by the vicious Kree to find out the secrets of the earth. But you have to understand the situation at that time. I had to exert my superhuman will to restrain the fear and pain in my heart. Because I always have a great mission. After all, I'm the first Earthling to contact alien civilization. I want to protect the earth and the dignity of the earth, Nick said calmly. Hill had a look of admiration on his face. The SHIELD agent knew everything about Nick, but it was a different feeling to hear Nick say it himself. At this time, Hill suddenly saw something incredible in the rearview mirror. I saw a woman in a tight suit flying in the air, rushing towards me quickly. Hill shouted directly, "Someone is following the car. She can fly." Nick looked back hurriedly, his face suddenly changed. Oh my god. He hurriedly parked the car aside. Carola felt a little depressed. She thought that she could at least scare the people on Earth by flying here. As a result, the cars and people here were very calm, with a demeanor of not changing their faces even when facing a mountain of pressure. This made Carola sigh in admiration. In fact, she didn't know. This is New York. New Yorkers are numb. It's just a woman who can fly. Haha. Carola landed on the roof of Nick's car. Nick got out of the car in a hurry, and Hill took out his pistol and pointed it at Carola, shouting, "Who are you?" Nick quickly asked the dazed Hill to put down his weapon. He swallowed and said, "Carola." He forced himself to remain calm and said lightly, "You are stepping on my car, isn't it not good?" Carola jumped down with a smile on her face, her expression a little complicated. "You're getting old." Nick snorted. "Of course people on Earth will get old. The problem is that you are not old." A trace of vigilance flashed through his mind. "Why did you return to Earth? Are there any enemies again?" Carola shook her head. "No, I met Link on Zelda and solved the disaster, so I took the time to go back to Earth to see. Your eyes that were scratched by the Devourer are still not healed." Hill frowned. Devouring beast. Weren't Nick's eyes damaged when the Kree tortured them and refused to surrender? Carola didn't notice the embarrassment on Nick's face and asked back, "The elemental devourer I mentioned is the creature that can meow, so you understand now, right?" Nick coughed and dodged Hill's strange gaze. As a cold-blooded agent, facing this situation that could ruin his entire life, Nick didn't dare to explain much and absolutely ignored it and downplayed the problem. Hill sneered, "Oh, our former director would rather die than surrender under the torture of a cat." Nick corrected, "It's the elemental devourer. A very scary creature." Welcome to Vote and subscribe to support genuine works. Chapter 494 Visiting the School. Link has been worried about something recently. The person who can make him worried is, of course, Zelda. After the 5 princesses merged into a complete Zelda, they seemed to like this state very much, so they have always maintained the form of one person. But this led to a consequence, that is, there are 5 different wills in one body. As a result, the 5 princesses began to frequently fight for the initiative of this body, and their personalities changed at any time, which made Link very uncomfortable. So Link suggested that they split into 5 again. But the princesses shook their heads, and they rarely had the same opinion. Midona whispered in Link's ear, "I suspect that, if they merge together, their wills may also merge into one. If that happens, does it mean that one Zelda will eat the other 4 Zeldas? Just like raising a poisonous insect?" After saying this, Link was scared. Midona described a terrible scene seriously. 5 Zeldas fighting for control in one body, and only one person can survive. It sounds particularly tragic. But Zelda denied it outright. "No. We have only one soul, but our wills are different. Then her face changed and she smiled. Link, are you worried about us? Don't think too much, we will solve this problem ourselves. Link couldn't tell which princess will switch to which princess. Anyway, such a Zelda with multiple personalities was scary next to him. Zelda didn't want to be divided into 5 people again, and they had their own reasons. First, it was very difficult to separate again, just like separating 2 magnets that were stuck together. Moreover, they already had traces of fusion, and forcibly separating them would also face the risk of soul damage. Moreover, they didn't want to do this. The Zeldas knew that it was an inevitable trend for them to integrate into one person. So Link stayed with such a chaotic princess. Zelda's temperament now looked more and more like the goddess Hylia. Moreover, her divine power from inside to outside was also amplifying Link's body. They were all the power of light, and their mutual power would resonate. Zelda was like a gem containing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, constantly nourishing Link next to her. This further strengthened Link's power. He felt that his proof of order would soon be full. But since there was no war, Link could not get any new battle rewards. One day, Rogers came over and said, Link, we want to ask you for a favor. Nori said happily, tell me. I'll agree on Link's behalf. Who do you want Link to beat? Roger smiled and said, no beating. Just ask him to visit Quicksilver and Vision who are in school. Wanda's mental state has been a little abnormal recently, and she refused to tell us the reason, so I asked Link to visit them. Quicksilver and Vision have been going to school quietly recently, but Tony and Natasha suspected that they could not be too obedient, so they asked Link to check it out. Link had nothing to do, so he agreed. He remembered that he had promised Spider-Man to give him a set of battle suits, so he asked Tony for it and brought it to Spider-Man's school. He was also very curious about what Spider-Man would encounter with Wanda and the others. Link walked into the school. It was a mess because the get out of class was over. There were young students everywhere. Link dressed himself up, and with the help of Loki, he slightly adjusted his facial features and made his long ears normal size. But because of Loki's bad taste, Link's neutral face was softened, making him look more like a girl. Link frowned and objected to this, but Loki, Midona on his shoulder, and Natasha all hid their own thoughts and coaxed Link to say that he looked normal, handsome and manly. Everyone said so Link believed it. But when he stepped into the school, because of his overly delicate and even beautiful face, the boys and girls present held their breath. Link quietly asked Navi who was hiding in his hair, why do they look at me like this? Navi smiled and said, maybe it's because you are a new face. Don't pay too much attention. So Link walked in calmly on the surface. The students around were talking about it. Who is this girl? She's so beautiful. She's even prettier than in the movies. But she's just a skinny girl. They were talking in low voices, but Link's ears were very sensitive, and he could easily hear them. Listening to those energetic boys talking about his body, Link's face suddenly darkened. If it weren't for the fact that these guys were young, Link really wanted to beat them up. But he was at least the world's leading superhero, so he should have some tolerance. If Thor or Hulk dared to say that to him, Link would have let them taste the power of alien men. But these were just a bunch of kids, although they looked a little older than Link. But in the eyes of Link, who had experienced too many things, they were just kids. But when he was walking around, the surrounding discussions and curious eyes still made Link a little bit unable to hold back, and he shouted loudly, you guys. The whole audience fell silent. Link hurriedly coughed twice, and said softly, who of you knows where Peter Parker is? Link's eyes casually stopped on a boy whose body was very suitable for playing rugby. The boy was strong and tall, but when he met Link's eyes, he seemed timid. I don't know. Someone immediately whispered, Peter Parker? That smart and lonely boy. Why is this girl looking for him? Link frowned, and at this moment, a gentle voice came from behind him. I know him. I'll take you to find him. Link heard the voice familiar, and turned around, and saw that it was Quicksilver. Link almost didn't recognize Quicksilver now. Quicksilver has silver hair, always likes to wear big framed windproof glasses and wears ugly jackets. Now that he is at school, Quicksilver has changed his clothes and shows his handsome side. Quicksilver naturally chatted with him, and Link tilted his head and smiled. Seeing that Quicksilver didn't recognize him, he said, then can you take me to find him? Quicksilver smiled, of course. At the same time, Quicksilver's heart was thumping, and he shouted in his heart, "What a cute girl, and she is also very handsome in men's clothes. Is it possible that Peter's spring has finally arrived?" At the same time, Quicksilver was indignant. What did this girl want from Parker? So Quicksilver waited for Link to find Peter Parker, while eagerly trying to get close to Link. He didn't realize the cruelty of the matter at all. Chapter 495, Scarlet Witch's Mutation. Link walked beside Quicksilver with a smile on his face. He wanted to see how long it would take Quicksilver to recognize him. The superpowered siblings always admired and feared Link. They were usually very respectful. Quicksilver said enthusiastically, "In fact, I have only been here for a short time, and I have only registered my nationality a short time ago." At this time, several sturdy boys passed by the roadside. When they saw Quicksilver, they greeted him and said, "Pete, are you sure you won't participate in this inter-school competition?" Quicksilver smiled and shook his head. The boys were very sorry. They smiled bitterly and said, "It's really strange. In the United States, there are boys who don't like football." Quicksilver shrugged coolly. "At least 2 months ago, I was not an American." Then the boys' eyes shifted to Link, and their breathing suddenly stopped. They said in a hoarse voice, "What a beautiful girl. Is this a living person?" Link blinked. Is this the first time he has received such an evaluation? But at the same time, he made up his mind to beat Loki up when he returned. There must be something wrong with the macut he gave Link. Even if Link tried his best to make his voice thick, it was useless. Natasha and her gang actually teamed up to deceive him. Link secretly wrote them all down in his own little black book. He doesn't bear grudges, but there are exceptions. Quicksilver boasted to Link with a calm expression, "I won't participate in this level of competition, otherwise it will be too unfair to the opponent." Navi whispered to Link, "This guy is showing off again." But Link snorted in his heart. Quicksilver is pretty good this time. Before Quicksilver and the other two went to school, Tony and Rogers warned them not to use superpowers to bully others. It seems that Quicksilver still restrains himself. Otherwise, with his super high speed, participating in rugby, basketball, and football is simply bullying. When Navi quickly poured cold water on him, he didn't restrain his superpowers. Otherwise, how could the rugby school team recruit him? A chopstick. Link was stunned. This is true. Quicksilver's cell phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and frowned when he heard the voice on the other end of the receiver. "Oh, okay, I see." Then he hung up. Link asked, "Can I ask what happened?" Quicksilver forced a smile. "Nothing. It's just that my sister has been feeling a little unwell lately." Link continued to ask, "Have you told your family?" Tony and the others had long known about the Scarlet Witch's abnormality, but the Scarlet Witch was unwilling to say more. This was very strange. This was one of the reasons why they asked Link to come and visit in disguise. Link himself was also very worried, because the problem with the Scarlet Witch this time was probably a side effect of the hyaline juice of the brain when she used the illusion to infect the Gerasim army. He needed to investigate it himself. After all, it was also his responsibility. It was indeed an inappropriate idea to try to let Wanda and Vision control such a large-scale army. Quicksilver looked around and said, "My sister, Wanda, often has hallucinations and sees some strange images. She can't tell her family about what she sees." Link continued to ask, "What did you see?" Quicksilver saw that Link was so persistent and suddenly shut up. This made Link even more puzzled. Scarlet Witch had hallucinations? She saw something that she didn't want the other Avengers to know. What could it be? Quicksilver cleverly changed the subject. "You look younger than me. Where do you go to school?" Link smiled. "I don't go to school." Quicksilver said with a worried look, "Not going to school? This won't work. At your age, you need to participate in social communication, otherwise you will be out of touch with others." Link. This seems to be the reason Rogers and his friends asked Quicksilver and the other two to go to school, and they actually used it on him. Quicksilver suddenly said excitedly, "Actually, I didn't go to school before, because there were more important things than going to school. Let's not talk about this for now. My family forced me and my sister to come to this school, and we soon understood the significance of being called here. When we first came here, we didn't even know how to communicate with other people of the same age, but later it was fine." Link nodded. This was also his original intention. the battle will always end completely, and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch will return to society sooner or later. These two children can't be allowed to be warriors for life, otherwise it will be too sad. He can also guess the experience of Quicksilver and the other two here. They were not used to it when they first came here, but with their innate talents and good looks, they were quickly accepted by other people in the school. Quicksilver is also very smart. When he was an Avenger, he was carefree and unrestrained. But when facing ordinary people in school, he behaved more decently. At least he knew to wear normal clothes. Quicksilver quickly took Link to find Peter Parker. Parker looked confused. There was actually a super beautiful girl giving him something. Such a good thing actually happened to him? Parker stammered, do I know you? Link nodded. This is a gift from your aunt's ex-boyfriend. Parker took the bag from Link with a strange look on his face. Aunt May's ex-boyfriend? Why did he send him something? Parker was about to open it, but Link just raised his hand to stop him. Open it when we get home. Parker was a little scared. Seeing that Link was so mysterious, there must be something unpleasant in it, right? Quicksilver looked at the scene of Parker and Link getting along, and immediately frowned. He finally found Link's abnormality. This girl behaved in a very different way from someone he knew. Her actions were very direct or stiff. She rarely showed any expression, and there was always a sense of uncommon people. Quicksilver began to be alert. But soon, a strong mental shock came from a distance. This invisible and colorless power came like a wave. People around fainted one after another. Link felt a strong mental power coming, and immediately focused his eyes to dispel the power. Quicksilver was staggering. He covered his head and said, "This feeling, something happened to my sister." He quickly turned into a phantom and rushed over, not even paying attention to Link. Link also hurriedly followed. Parker was lying on the ground. His face was confused. He was almost knocked unconscious by the mental shock, but because of his position, he was just blocked by Link, and with his strong will, he barely stayed awake. He looked around in a daze, and saw Link's hurried back. Subconsciously followed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 496. Scarlet Witch saw the plot. Quicksilver was the fastest, and arrived at the library first. Scarlet Witch looked ahead blankly, her powerful mental power constantly escaping, while Vision tried hard to suppress Scarlet Witch with the Mind Stone. If it were an ordinary person, he would have been forced into a self-deafened coma by such a powerful mental shock. But he is Scarlet Witch's brother, and they are connected by blood. In addition, he has been with his sister for a long time, so his resistance is also very strong, so he survived. Quicksilver asked hurriedly, "Vision, what's wrong with my sister?" Vision also said with horror, "She just said that she saw something again, and then I called you." Soon, she released her mental power uncontrollably. Quicksilver was so anxious that he turned around in circles. "It's so annoying. Who can help me? I'm going to call Boss Stark." "Calm down." Navi's voice came, and Link also ran over quickly. Quicksilver was stunned. "I just heard a very familiar voice. Why didn't you faint?" Navi floated out from Link's hair with a shining face and said, "This little power can't knock Link out." Quicksilver immediately looked like he had seen a ghost. "Link, where is he?" Link passed by Quicksilver depressedly, and Navi said, "Link asked Loki to change his appearance and walked all the way with you. You didn't realize it?" Quicksilver's face immediately turned pale. "She is Link." Link said, "I changed the appearance, but not the voice. Didn't you hear it?" Quicksilver immediately said, "Please. How many times do you speak a year? Can I recognize your voice? Why are you pretending to be a girl? Are you going to deceive my feelings?" If the situation was not inappropriate now, Quicksilver really wanted to sit down on the ground. If Link wants to enter this school openly, he must disguise himself, okay? Otherwise, his long ears alone will attract attention wherever he goes. We didn't expect you to mistake Link for a girl. Be careful that Link will bear a grudge. Quicksilver's face rose. Link hurriedly came to Vision, and Vision said seriously, "Are you here to spy on us?" Navi said, "What do you mean by spying?" You didn't tell us about Wanda's abnormality, and now something is wrong, isn't it? Vision hurriedly said, no, it's really inconvenient to tell everyone what Wanda dreamed of. Help me see what's wrong with Vision first. Although Link is a brave man who uses knives and guns, he has been with Zelda for a long time, and is also good at perceiving in her heart. He immediately put his hand on the Scarlet Witch's forehead, and soon, Link withdrew his hand. Seeing the worried expressions of Quicksilver and Vision, Navi said strangely, nothing serious happened. Link's face was very calm. The two of them didn't understand. Navi explained, the power of the Scarlet Witch is growing. This is a common loss of control of power during the growth process. It's not a big deal. Quicksilver sighed, that's good. I was scared to death. Link was quite surprised. The Scarlet Witch's potential was too strong. After destroying the Giraffim army with illusions, her mental power did not decline, but became stronger, and even made Wanda lose some control of her Scarlet power. It was also because of the overflow of this vigorous mental power that the Scarlet Witch saw some strange things. Quicksilver continued, but how can we comfort Wanda? Should we let her lose control like this? A little light power appeared at Link's fingertips, and this power made all those who were not in the dark camp feel peaceful. The light power in Link and Zelda's bodies is not a power used for fighting at all. Using this power to fight is actually a deviation from the main function of the light power. Link tapped the power of light on Scarlet Witch's forehead, and a peaceful spirit immediately flowed into it, quickly helping Scarlet Witch to channel it. The overflowing spirits around her quickly receded, and were collected in Scarlet Witch's brain. Her absent-minded eyes gradually began to light up. I dreamed of something strange again. Scarlet Witch rubbed her head and said. She soon saw Link. You are. Navi said, with such an obvious sign. Of course it's Link. Scarlet Witch screamed and looked horrified. Why did you come to our school in disguise? What secret do you have? Link asked Navi to say, you came here for your secret. What did you see? Scarlet Witch hesitated, and Vision and Quicksilver also looked embarrassed. Link's face was very serious. Navi said, you have to tell us, so that we can help you. Even if you don't tell others, can't you just tell Link? Can't Link trust you? Vision said without hesitation, of course. Link glared at Vision fiercely, and Vision was scared away like a mouse. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver looked at each other. Link's status in their hearts was very high, even higher than Roger's and Tony. They remembered very clearly that Link calmly helped their family intercept missiles and stop the Civil War. So Scarlet Witch said seriously, I tell you, you can't tell Boss Stark and Captain. Link nodded. Quicksilver immediately said before Scarlet Witch, my sister saw Boss Stark fighting with Captain in her hallucination. Link's face changed. Vision hid behind a bookcase, timidly poked his head out, and answered, Wanda also saw a male Vision. Scarlet Witch said depressedly, I also saw my brother being shot to death by a volley of bullets when he was fighting Ultron in order to save others. Quicksilver said angrily, this is the weirdest. Okay. Bullets can actually hit me. Are you kidding? Navi was speechless. Link's eyelids twitched. This is a big deal. What Scarlet Witch saw was not an illusion at all. It was the plot of the original Time and Space. The true ending of the Avengers Civil War, Jarvis, Vision, and Quicksilver. The Scarlet Witch looked at Link blankly. I also saw that in the hallucination, there was no you and Princess Zelda, and an agent named Buggy killed Boss Stark's parents, which led to a real breakup between the two of them. The Scarlet Witch said worriedly, these hallucinations are so real. I dare not tell Boss Stark, for fear that there really is a person named Buggy in this world who killed his parents, and then he and the captain fought. Link took a deep breath. This matter was a bit complicated. He asked tentatively, in the hallucination, is there a scene where you and Vision elope? The Scarlet Witch nodded subconsciously, yes. She blushed immediately, and Vision was also shocked. Quicksilver opened his mouth wide and pointed at Vision. Are you my brother-in-law? That's sister-in-law? The Scarlet Witch shyly shouted, I said it was an illusion. It's not real. Chapter 497, An Unprecedented Civil War Among the Avengers. Vision murmured, no wonder Wanda has been looking at me strangely lately. Scarlet Witch hurriedly said, I've already said it's an illusion. Don't take it seriously. Just pretend you don't know. Link, Please don't tell anyone. I always feel that this kind of thing will cause big trouble. Link's face was gloomy. He was thinking about how to solve Bucky's problem. Navi helped Link and said happily, of course. Link's mouth is very tight. He is very reliable. Vision's eyes turned to other places. Then is this guy tight-lipped? Quicksilver said, who are you talking about? But Quicksilver turned around much faster than he spoke. His words became dry because he saw the confused boy behind him. Peter Parker. Parker did not faint and followed Link's back in a daze. Due to Wanda's mental shock, Link's perception of the outside world has weakened a lot, coupled with Spider-Man's already super strong hiding ability. Link didn't find him in time, so Parker listened to the whole thing. After the dizziness in his head, he realized what a strange thing he had witnessed. So he held the bag that Link gave him and stood there stupidly. As a result, he was discovered by Vision. Parker opened his eyes wide and looked at the three transfer students with a stiff tone. You are Avengers? Scarlet Witch covered her head. Hate. I just said that you can't spread it. Quicksilver said viciously, then kill it. He made a fierce gesture of wiping his neck with his index finger. Parker was immediately alert and his hair stood up. He threw the bag on the ground and prepared for battle. A smooth red and black tights slid out of the bag. Vision hurriedly stopped Quicksilver. You can't mess around. Quicksilver rushed to Parker with a gangster-like demeanor and said viciously, you know something you shouldn't know. Tell me, should I poke your eyes out or pull out your tongue? Scarlet Witch said. She said weakly, this seems a bit inconsistent with our style. Parker also hurriedly nodded in agreement with Scarlet Witch. That's right. You are the Avengers. Quicksilver said slowly in a hoarse voice, it's okay, just don't let others know. The Avengers' personality collapsed. Parker hunched his back like a cat, ready to fight. Link floated over, and a baseball bat made of ice condensed in his hand, gently knocking Quicksilver and Parker on the head twice. Navi said, you guys are not really going to fight, are you? Quicksilver rubbed his head. He didn't dare hide. We have to scare this guy. Otherwise what if he leaks the secret? Parker immediately said, no way, I'm super tight-lipped. Link glared at Parker. I don't believe that. You spoiler maniac. Clearly sensing Link's distrust, Parker swore solemnly, I promise you, I swear to keep it a secret. Quicksilver said, it would be more practical to dig out your eyes. Parker said dissatisfiedly, why do you have to dig out your eyes? I'm also a reserve Avengers after all. Vision and Scarlet Witch were shocked. How come we didn't know? Quicksilver cracked his knuckles. You dare to pretend to be an Avenger. It seems I have to dig out your eyes. Parker said weakly, can you not mention the matter of digging out your eyes? Navi explained, this guy is Spider-Man, who has been a frequent news guest in New York recently. Link originally wanted to recruit him, but because he is young, he let him finish his studies first. Vision, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver exclaimed, you are Spider-Man? Parker coughed, yes, it's really me. Why are you surprised? Your reputation is much greater than mine. Vision looked at Parker, I have analyzed your strength, it's quite powerful. At least you can fight the captain on equal terms. Parker was surprised and said, do you think so highly of me in the Avengers? And then I was beaten half to death by the captain with his rich experience. Vision finished the rest of the word slowly. Parker's face was long. Navi saw the unconscious people around him and began to wake up and immediately said, let's talk somewhere else first. The ordinary people here are about to wake up. So Parker picked up the tights that Link asked Tony to customize for him. Everyone left in a hurry. The four half-grown children gathered together and chatted non-stop. But Link seemed more silent than before, not because he talked too much when he was disguised before, but because of the hallucination that Scarlet Witch accidentally saw. Scarlet Witch actually saw the picture of the original time and space, just like watching a movie. What does this mean? And Link himself was also uneasy. Bucky's hidden danger is still lurking, although the external contradictions of the Avengers have been eliminated now. But there may still be cracks inside. If it is not handled well, the Civil War will still come as scheduled. And because of the incident of Hela's liberation this time, it was much earlier. It didn't happen right after Thanos' attack. So now the Avengers are all bright, with Thor, Hulk and others all here. Once a civil war breaks out, it will be inimaginably fierce. Link thought about finding Bucky and persuading him to admit his mistakes to Tony. Then everything will be easy to talk about. Tony is also a generous person. Of course, asking Bucky to admit his mistakes is also cruel to Bucky himself, because he is just a puppet. More importantly, Rogers. Because compared to Bucky, it is obvious that Rogers hurt Tony more. Once Rogers intervenes, the rift between the two iron shields will quickly magnify. All these must be taken into consideration. But what Link didn't know was that Tony was sitting in the laboratory with a sullen face at this moment, and his expression was as if Damie had given him 2 tons of chlorophyll. Tony heard everything that Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Parker and others said at Spider-Man school clearly. Back to the beginning. Link told Tony about Parker before, and Tony was very interested in this Spider-Boy. He made a tight suit for combat, and out of curiosity, he installed some detectors to analyze Parker's body and a mess of smart chips inside. When Parker was holding Link's gift and heard the incident in the Scarlet Witch's hallucination, Jarvis captured the information that the tight suit accidentally obtained and transmitted it to Tony because it involved Tony's parents. He heard it clearly. Bucky killed his parents. Tony clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, "Jarvis, help me find all the information about the agent named Bucky, everything." At this time, old Rogers, calmly reading the newspaper at home, noticed the date. Paused, he said to himself, "It's this time period. Since Link is here, the Civil War should be avoided." Old Rogers couldn't help but fall into chaotic memories. Chapter 498 Iron Man vs Captain America. Tony, with an extremely horrified mood, quickly used Jarvis's powerful computing power to search for information from all over the world. After the Hydra infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ant-Man incident, Tony had a lot of information about S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. Although Bucky's intelligence was particularly secretive, it seemed that there was no such person in the world. But even if Hydra deliberately concealed it, Bucky the Winter Soldier had no ID card, no social network, and no social position of his own. But as long as he lived in this world, he would always leave various clues. Since Tony already knew that there was such a person, no one could stop Tony from digging out clues about Bucky. Bang! After seeing the information, Tony sat up suddenly. His chest seemed to be spraying venom, and the excitement brought by hatred made him breathe rapidly. Pop! He slammed the door and walked out of the laboratory. Natasha was outside at this moment. Seeing Tony's unimaginable hideous face, she immediately became alert and asked, "What's wrong with you? I feel that your mental state is a bit bad." Natasha remembered Tony's crazy state during the period when he was poisoned by palladium. But Tony shook his head, never looking at Natasha. "No, my spirit is not that fragile. I'm indestructible now." He waved his hand, and the wall broke through, and the Iron Man components were quickly spliced on Tony, covering his face burning with hatred. Natasha exclaimed, "Tony, what's wrong with you?" Tony didn't answer, and with a bang, he crashed through the ceiling and disappeared into the sky. Banner walked out in a daze. "What happened? Who is fighting?" Natasha hurriedly said, "Tony is in a bad situation," and flew away angrily. "I don't know what happened, but it's definitely not a good thing." At this moment, Rogers and Falcon, who were dressed in plain clothes, came to an abandoned factory. Bucky, the Winter Soldier, was here. Rogers was very excited. He wanted to see Bucky so much. Ding ding ding. There was a sound of iron hammering inside. Rogers paused and walked in with Falcon. It was Bucky, whom he missed in his heart, sitting on the ground dejectedly. Rogers was so excited that he couldn't express it. "Do you recognize me?" Bucky nodded with difficulty. "Steve, long time no see." Bucky's voice was unexpectedly hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken for a century. Rogers and Bucky hugged each other. He was about to have a conversation with Bucky when the phone rang. Bucky's body stiffened in Rogers' arms. Rogers smiled and said, "Don't be nervous, I'll take a call." He saw that it was Natasha's call and frowned immediately. Natasha rarely contacted Rogers privately. If she called him, there might be some emergency. But this couldn't dampen Rogers' high spirits. He happily answered the phone. "Hello, Natasha, what do you want to talk to me about?" His tone was particularly relaxed, but Natasha's next words made his face change drastically. Natasha asked, "I saw Tony go out angrily today. He smashed the ceiling and flew away. What happened to him?" Bang. Iron Man crashed through a wall and flew into the factory. He opened his mask and stared at Bucky, his chin trembling. Rogers was shocked and murmured, "I found Tony." Natasha said anxiously, "Tony went to find you. What happened to you?" She did not receive Rogers' reply because Iron Man shot a laser at Bucky. Bucky turned over to dodge, and Rogers threw away his phone and took out the vibranium shield to block Iron Man's laser. Tony yelled, "Howard Stark and his wife, Winter Soldier, do you know them?" Rogers and Falcon of course found out that Bucky killed Tony's parents when he was controlled. Rogers immediately said, "Tony, calm down." Tony gritted his teeth and stared at Rogers. "It seems that you know everything." Bucky was controlled for too long and was mentally sensitive because of hiding from XZ. When he heard Howard Stark, he immediately remembered that he killed Tony's parents. The enemy is here to seek revenge. Bucky immediately went on alert. His heart was full of anger, and he said, "Yes, I remember it clearly." This sentence completely ignited Tony. Iron Man rushed over quickly, and Rogers shouted, "Bucky, run." Rogers and Falcon hurriedly stopped Tony. This move undoubtedly made Tony even more annoyed. Jarvis reported, "Find 3 weaknesses of Captain America and Falcon." Tony immediately followed the plan specified by Jarvis. First, he jumped high, kicked Falcon away with his toes, and damaged the wings hidden behind Falcon with a laser. A punch hit the vibranium shield. Looking at Bucky's fleeing back, Tony sprinted away at high speed. Rogers gritted his teeth and grabbed Tony's ankle and threw Tony away with all his strength. But Tony still released a laser, which passed through Bucky's iron arm. Bucky fell to the ground. Rogers gasped, "Tony, calm down." Tony yelled, "He killed my mom." Iron Man's thrusters started up again, bypassing Rogers and killing Bucky from a distance. As soon as Iron Man flew up, Rogers and Hawkeye looked at each other and nodded. Rogers threw out his vibranium shield, and Falcon took out his special pistol and shot. Bang, bang. Iron Man fell to the ground with a bridge, raising a cloud of dust. Report. Mr. Tony, the thrusters on both feet are destroyed. Tony hated it and raised his hand to shoot Falcon. His last bit of rationality still worked, and the diameter of the laser was reduced, penetrating Falcon's abdomen without damaging the main organs. Rogers rushed with a shield. Iron Man raised his hand and slapped the vibranium shield away. Rogers gritted his teeth and punched, and Tony also punched. Boom. Boom. Both sides took a step back. Rogers said, "I can spend the whole day with you." Tony's blood boiled when he heard it, and he immediately asked Jarvis to analyze Rogers' fighting habits. He didn't want to wait, and he must not let Bucky escape. Rogers and Tony fought fiercely. Tony's fighting rhythm was getting faster and faster. Rogers was a fighting master, but he was a flesh and blood, while Tony was the shell of Iron Man, and the arc reactor was the motive force. He was soon at a disadvantage. Tony pinched Rogers' throat and pushed him to the corner. Just when Tony was about to knock Rogers unconscious, Rogers said in a hoarse voice, "I will never let you kill Bucky. What about my parents?" Tony couldn't help but exert force with his palm. Bang! A flash of lightning shot out, and Tony flew out. Rogers knelt on the ground and coughed dryly. Thor, Banner, Natasha, Loki and others arrived. Chapter 499 to Captain America's meet. Tony looked over and saw Banner pulling up Rogers, and everyone was standing opposite him. Tony was like an isolated villain, and he felt very lonely for a moment. Natasha asked, "What happened?" Thor was also shocked. "Tony, did you want to kill the captain just now?" Tony stood up and said in a deep voice, "I only killed one person." Falcon lay on the ground and painfully told the Avengers who came. Rogers tried to comfort Tony. "Bucky didn't kill your parents. He was just controlled." Tony said coldly, "Then my parents died in vain." Rogers panted and said, "But Bucky is my fastest brother." Tony hit his chest hard. "What about me?" Seeing that the situation was getting worse and worse, Thor and Banner certainly had the ability to suppress the conflict, but now the two elders of the Avengers, Tony and Rogers, were on the verge of a fight, and the Avengers were broken. But they were at a loss. At this time, Bucky the Winter Soldier was running away. He hated the life of hiding from the enemy, and he also hated the hateful look of Tony who suddenly appeared. He lowered his head and ran hard. Suddenly, he felt something like sunshine and hurriedly stopped. In front of him, there was a beautiful blonde girl waiting for him. The Winter Soldier blinked and said in a daze, "Heaven, angel." Zelda whispered, "I'm not an angel. You shouldn't run away." The confusion on the Winter Soldier's face was wiped out by hostility. But before he could react, a huge force suddenly came from behind, and he was pressed to the ground. Link suppressed the Winter Soldier, just as he suppressed the out-of-control Rogers. The Winter Soldier struggled desperately, roaring like a beast. Link said with a slightly tired look, "Calm down. I will find a way to resolve the feud between you and Tony, maybe." Link received a call from Natasha and immediately knew that something was wrong. After settling the 4 children, himself included, he flew here desperately according to the location sent by Natasha, Rogers' phone. Out of confidence in Tony and Rogers, knowing that the 2 of them would not kill anyone, he hurried over to stop Rogers. Zelda came over and said, "Are you a good friend of Rogers?" "So are we. I just learned something about you. The fate that you have received is very unfair to you." Zelda's words have a natural magic that calms people down. Listening to Zelda's tender voice, the Winter Soldier seemed to be relieved of the depression and vigilance from a world away. Link nodded at Zelda. Zelda continued, "We will take you back to Rogers and Tony. You have to apologize to Tony sincerely, and he will forgive you. Just an apology can resolve your conflict." No way. This is actually a helpless move by Link and Zelda. If Link brought the Winter Soldier to Tony at this moment and handed him over to Tony to execute the Winter Soldier in front of everyone, the Winter Soldier would also apologize sincerely. Even if Tony hated him in his heart, he would forgive Bucky for Rogers. This move is like proposing in front of everyone, and the girl will involuntarily agree under the gazes and cheers of everyone. This is very unfair to Tony. Link and Zelda were very sad. Their initial solution was actually to let Bucky save Tony once, just like Gandning and Ling Tong. But the incident happened too suddenly. What surprised them was that Bucky angrily said, "Apologize." Bah. Link's eyes instantly turned cold. Zelda hurriedly said, "Link, don't be impulsive." Link's heart was calm. There were 2 murderous intentions in his heart. The first came from Bucky's rudeness to Zelda, and the second was that he knew very well why Bucky refused to apologize. Hydra manipulated Bucky to kill many people under the control of the Winter Soldier. But Bucky did not do such things. He swore that, even if Hydra threatened his life, he would not do anything that would harm the world. Bucky was unwilling to bear such hatred that did not belong to him at all. He would not apologize with dignity. Link knew how miserable Bucky was, but he did not have much sympathy. After all, most of the asterisk soldiers did not intend to massacre Jews, but were forced and ordered by their superiors. They were also innocent, but what awaited them was the punishment of war criminals. The Avenger who had the best relationship with Link was always Tony, because Link knew that, since Bucky said so, he would never succumb to Link's threats. He was in a dilemma. An old voice came over. "Link, don't think too much. Leave this world to me." Link looked up blankly and saw a familiar old man directly. It was actually Old Rogers. Old Rogers came over and said, "Bucky, do you still recognize me?" Bucky, the Winter Soldier, was stunned and said, "You Steve, how did you age so fast?" Link also opened his mouth wide. Old Rogers smiled slightly. His smile was full of vicissitudes. People who live too long will age. This is normal. He looked at Link again and said calmly, "Since you have changed history, I might as well change it again. When people get old, some memories will fade, but I still can't forget the incident of hurting Tony this time. Maybe there is a better way to have the best of both worlds." Link let go of Bucky, and Bucky still looked at Old Rogers with a silly look. He didn't know what happened. Why did Rogers suddenly have wrinkles on his face, as if the last bit of Antarctic ice on his body melted, and his body decayed in 3 seconds? At the factory, Tony said coldly, "I will never let the Winter Soldier go. Whoever stops me will be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life." His heart was cold, and he pointed his finger at Rogers. "I'm an arms dealer. Too many innocent lives have been lost because of my hands. One more is not bad." The atmosphere was extremely bad, and things were constantly sliding in the worst direction. At this time, an old voice came from behind. "Tony, Tony turned his head and was angry at first because he saw Bucky, and then happy because he saw Zelda and Link, because the other Avengers had a tendency to stand on Roger's side, which made Tony's emotions more extreme, and then he was stunned because he saw the old Rogers. Banner stroked his chin. Oh my god. He looked at Rogers beside him in disbelief and muttered, "That old Rogers, is it Loki in disguise?" Loki spread his hands helplessly. "That old Rogers is me pretending to be, then who am I? What kind of philosophical question is this?" The old Rogers looked at his stunned younger self and remembered the scene when he traveled through time and space and fought with himself in the plot of Avengers 1. "I'm Steve Rogers. You may be shocked, but you are not mistaken. There are indeed two Rogers in this world." Chapter 500. Of course I forgave him. The two Captain Americas looked at each other. The younger one had a look of fear and even a little nausea. The older one had a peaceful look, as if he was looking at his grandson. Thor rubbed his eyes. "Why are there two captains?" Banner quickly moved away from Rogers beside him and said vigilantly, "Could it be that the original Captain America was not frozen at all and is living in the world incognito? And Rogers, who has been fighting with us, is actually a fake? Because I have never heard of a human life that can wake up in a frozen state. You know, if the human body drops to a few degrees below zero, the water in the cells will turn into ice crystals and pierce the cell walls." Roger's scalp exploded, and he hurriedly said, "I'm real." Rogers also encountered the most serious problem in the world. How can he prove that I'm who I am? Loki shook his head. "You don't have the final say. Don't we have a super agent here who is good at real machines? She must be able to tell who is cheating." Natasha laughed dryly. "My level is not that good. I can't tell." Old Roger slowly looked at Natasha and said, "It's great to meet you. Of course, everyone. Didn't I say it before? This young man and I are both Steven Rogers. This matter is a little difficult to explain, so you have to listen to me slowly." Old Roger smiled faintly and told everyone his experience. Due to some taboos, Old Rogers did not tell the Avengers about the future, nor did he tell them that Link and Zelda did not appear in his timeline at all. Rogers' Adam's apple paused. He struggled to organize his words and concluded, "That is to say, in the near future, I will go back to the past and live a peaceful life with Carter." Old Rogers looked at Rogers reproachfully. "That's right. Sharon is your niece. You will watch her grow up." Rogers held his head and murmured, "Oh my god. He now has some ambiguous relationship with Sharon that he can't explain." This undoubtedly gave him a critical hit. Tony looked left and right, staring at Bucky fiercely. Then he said, "Link, although I don't know about this guy you have found, but it seems that I have successfully built a time machine in the future, but now is not the time to talk about these things. I only want to do one thing now, that is to kill Bucky, the bastard." Link looked at the old Rogers with a worried look. He still didn't know how the old Rogers would stop this tragedy. Zelda took Link's hand and told him not to worry. Old Rogers looked at Tony and said in his old voice, "Tony, I come from the past, but I also come from the future. I witnessed your future with my own eyes." Tony's face changed. "Then what did you see? Did you see me tear the Winter Soldier into pieces?" Old Rogers said quietly, "No, you didn't kill Bucky in the end. Even if I push Bucky in front of you now, you won't kill Bucky. This is the future I saw." Bucky, Tony and Rogers all changed their faces at the same time. Link also raised his eyebrows and looked at the old Rogers in surprise. "You are lying. Do you think you are the only one who knows the plot?" Sure enough, Rogers is getting more and more smooth. Since he said "Long live Hydra," he can lie to people without changing his face or heartbeat. Tony laughed and said, "You said I won't kill the Winter Soldier, the enemy who killed my parents? Am I so weak?" Old Roger smiled and said, "Tony, this is not weakness, this is kindness. Because you are such a person. And he looked at Rogers, "I hurt you at the time, and also hurt your kind heart." Tony was very shaken, raised his arm, and pointed at Bucky, and the energy in his palm was gathering. At this time, Bucky was moved by the lies of old Rogers, and his eyes looking at Tony softened a lot. Bucky was tortured by hatred, and he also respected the true heroes who gave up hatred the most. Bucky put one hand on his chest and said sincerely, "Although I didn't kill your parents, I feel your pain. Even if I was manipulated, my hands are full of the blood of your kind parents. I pray for your forgiveness. I also pray that your pain can be relieved. I'm sorry, Tony Stark. Tony gritted his teeth, and Jarvis warned, Mr. Tony, the energy in your hand has reached a critical point and must be fired, otherwise your arm will explode. Bang. Tony raised his hand and pointed to the sky. A laser directly pierced through the ceiling and shot into the atmosphere. He looked at Bucky bitterly and murmured, my future has told me that I will forgive you. Is there any need to say this? He left dejectedly, exuding the emotion of don't come near me, which moved Rogers and others. Link and Zelda looked at each other and hurried to catch up with Tony. Link turned his head and noticed that the old Rogers winked at him. Is the matter perfectly resolved? Link forced a smile. This may be the best solution. Old Rogers was telling a lie. But Tony was indeed such a person. He would not kill innocent people. After experiencing the ups and downs, and the Tony who dedicated himself to the world, old Rogers saw it clearly. Hatred can only be resolved through inner kindness and struggle. Banner sighed. Great. The matter has been resolved perfectly. Rogers lowered his head. No, not perfect at all. He looked at old Rogers and asked, as you said, did it hurt Tony? Old Rogers was very serious. Yes, it hurt deeply. Zelda and Link found the dejected Tony, who was lying on a tattered lawn. This place was not suitable for taking a nap, but Tony felt physically and mentally exhausted. Link Zelda, I'm not such a good-tempered person. If you dare to disturb me, be careful that I will make you pay back the rent you owe. Link pulled Zelda to sit next to Tony. The two of them have the warm power of light in their bodies. This power can restore people's body and mind better than using it for fighting. As soon as Link arrived, Tony felt a heavy heart relieved. Zelda said softly, Tony, we are your friends. Tony laughed sarcastically. By the way, if I really fight with Rogers, who will you side with? I think it will be the captain. After all, Link's personality is so similar to his. But Link said seriously, of course I will side with you. Tony was stunned. You are comforting me. This is not in line with your character. Link said, no. Tony looked at Link's sapphire eyes, and he finally showed a real smile. You kid. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.